And in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
It's time to start the show and talk about the sports we saw. Inside jokes and takes from Danger and Battaglia. Bills and the Sabres and the Ambers. Who gave a microphone to these jerks? Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. Welcome to the sports bar, that's where you are. With Danger and Battaglia.
A very hearty good afternoon to you as we welcome you on into Rochester's only local sports talk show. You have found the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Glad you're with us and listening along locally at 95.7 FM, AM 950, the free-to-download Odyssey app, your smart device. When you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan, we've even got the video stream up and rolling for you. You can watch the Sports Bar on our YouTube channel, and we're also streaming on Twitch at The Fan Rochester. Like and subscribe while you're there. I'm Danger. That's Battaglia.
Happy March, buddy. Free agency begins next Monday. Some may already said, hey, we're already in the throes of the offseason. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Do you feel like I feel today, where I know this week we lose an hour of sleep, but I feel today like I know I'm going to feel next week when we lose that hour of sleep. If that, I'm just a little off. You know, like I feel like I lost an hour somewhere, or I lost a day somewhere, and I know that the sun is now setting after 6 o'clock, so our days are getting longer, and they're about to get an hour longer, but I just feel a little bit off. I need like a pressure release valve. I need something.
Need a beer? What do you need? No.
Couple of beers.
Yeah, a couple beers.
Couple of beers.
Couple beers.
This weekend, there was a skit that was making its way around the internet from Saturday Night Live, and it was a mock commercial. Shane Gillis was the guest, and he was the star of this mock commercial that they did for a new prescription called Couple of Beers. And man, if you saw it, then you know it, and if you saw it and you know it, then you know that skit spoke to me unlike anything any comedian has ever done, ever. There's a line in there where they talk about how a couple of beers can, depending on your situations, mild to severe Italian wife. A couple of beers can handle that. Couple of beers definitely could use it.
Yeah, I think that's maybe you just need a couple beers, buddy.
Oh.
And you'll be back on.
So I have a bit of news.
Uh-oh. Now, full disclosure, I don't know where you're going with this, so. All right. I sense sarcasm.
We've got a lot going on. There's a lot happening here in the Sports Bar today. We're going to have a great show. We're going to wrap up the Combine from Indianapolis. Our buddy Russell Brown, who covers the draft for Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, is going to stop by 425. We'll get to Mike Catalana, 13 Web Sports, at Buffalo Plus, who was in Indianapolis all last week. We'll talk to him about the Combine. We heard from Khalil Shakir earlier today. The best wide receiver free agent on the market is no longer on the market. We had a trade in the NFL this weekend. We had a lot to get to. But right off the top here, because this is something that happened this weekend, and when it happened this weekend, I'm like, you know what? I'm excited for this because I can't wait to tell Gino about this on Monday morning or Monday afternoon in the Sports Bar. I've got friends in New York City, as you do. You went to school for them, and you've got plenty of people. You're going there next month for your hit
the nerd button. Go ahead. 3, 2, 1.
What are you talking about? You're going for your fantasy draft. You go every year. Nerd! But that's not what's exciting. What's exciting is where you conduct the fantasy draft every year. What's the name of the place you guys go to?
It's a sports bar. It's one of the oldest sports bars in the country. It's called Blondie.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Blondie's. Hey, we got a fantasy draft in the back room. Stay out of the champagne room, boys. Say hi to Ginger on stage 3. Ginger, stage 3. Yeah, sure. You have it's a sports bar. Yeah. Big, huge, exaggerated air quotes. So I have a couple friends in New York City that for years have been saying, we've got to go to a steakhouse, get steak, get bourbon. Let's go to one of these high-end, fancy New York City steakhouses and live it up for a night. And I'm like, you know what? We keep talking about it. Let's take action. Let's go. When I talk about needing a release valve, this is exactly what I need. This is the prescription. This is exactly what I need.
So this is you're deciding to go to New York. Do I understand this?
I am going to New York City. You're going at the beginning of April. I'm going at the beginning of May. going on May 1st. And I'm going on May 1st because we said, you know what? Let's make more of it than just a steakhouse. Gino, for the first time in my life,
I just say, yeah.
The Mets.
I'm going to a Mets game.
Step right up and greet the Mets.
You know, that's a day game.
I know. That's why we picked it.
Oh, okay.
We picked a day game.
Arizona,
We're going to go see the Diamondbacks and the Mets. And then we're going to go eat steak and drink bourbon at a fancy New York City steakhouse. But as soon as they said, let's make, because they're both Mets fans. One lives in Long Island. One's in the city, but it's been a Mets fan his whole life. So I'm just wondering, what is the checklist I need before I go to Citi Field? Do I need cotton candy? Do I need to wear jorts? What do I need to be able to fit in with the rest of... No, you nothing. What?
You're gonna convert. That's what's gonna happen. You're gonna go
dress
in there.
as Grimace.
You will convert. You will be welcome, and you'll be like, wow, I was such a D all these years.
Look, I know
you will convert.
I know 100% I'm going to have a good time. I don't know that I will convert, but I can guarantee you, I know I will have a good time. I'm going to be at Citi Field.
Who's going? I'm taking it as just radio guys. Is that
Yeah,
it?
me and a couple of friends that I've worked with in radio for years that are in New York, and they keep saying, you know, we got to do this, we got to do this. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And they're like, well, let's make more of it than just the steakhouse. Let's make a whole day of it. I'm like, okay. Found that date. I'm like, what do you guys think? Weather in May will be decent. It won't be too cold.
Yeah, that's a Thursday, and then you can just make it a long weekend.
That's right. So I'll be absent from the sports bar Thursday, Friday, but the best of all excuses, I will be at Citi Field, as you say, converting to become a Mets fan.
Okay. There's only one condition I'm going to place on you. Ready? You need to call in that afternoon.
From Citi Field?
From Citi Field. If I'm going to be doing the show with Timmy or with Dan DeLorean or whoever, I want a Mike Danger call in. You can opt it. You know, it's just simple as me calling you, how you doing, bud?
Okay.
And then we hear the ambiance, and you're going to be like, this is fantastic.
Of course it's going to be fantastic.
I didn't know what I was missing.
Now, I will say that I would say that about any game that I'm going to, any Major League Baseball stadium that I've never been to. I would say that. I would say this is fantastic. I could go to Pittsburgh and go to PNC Park and be like, you know what? I need to go to more Pirate games, even though I'm not a Pirate fan. I need to go to more because I felt that way about Rogers Center when I went to Toronto last summer. Like, God, I need to go to more ballparks. This is great with the roof open in Toronto. The vibes were fantastic. Watching Ernie Clement hit a home run, the whole thing. So I'm excited, and I will be excited no matter what, but I also recognize I'm going with two social misfit Mets fans, and I'm going to be surrounded by so what do I need to prepare? Do I need to get like one of those giant 3D printed OMG thick chains to wear to the game? What exactly?
That's two. Twice. I'm not going to let you hang on this one. The one thing you do need to know, it's not like even Yankee Stadium, they have that block. I don't know if it's still there, stands or whatever the bar. There is nothing around Citi Field.
Yeah.
They're trying to improve that, but you know, in the outfield, it's literally a junkyard. It literally is like, okay, an auto recycling place, and you get off the train. That's pretty much it. There's not a lot of parking, so you just kind of take the train in.
No, the game plan is I'm going to stay overnight near Odyssey headquarters there, not headquarters, Odyssey's studios there in New York City. Take a tour of that. I want to, say hi to some friends while I'm there. Maybe jump in to see, our Odyssey Sports sister station, The Fan, there in New York City, and just, kind of take it all in before going to the game and then enjoying some steak on Thursday night.
See, going back to what you said about couple beers, I don't know if you caught this one or not. And you could relate. So you are going to a Mets game. Here's the irony, okay?
Yeah.
The Jays are in town. Am I going to see Jays Mets when I'm down there?
For your fantasy baseball draft.
Well, that's going to be on Saturday, but I'm going to be there all day Friday. So you are going to do the show with Dan DeLorean that Friday, or you'll just take off, okay? But the point is, I have my flight gets in. What do? We're going to MoMA.
Oh, the Museum of Modern Art. The executive producer's tagging along on this trip.
Yeah. Yep. So I saw that couple beers will help with museums.
Yeah, it will. That will absolutely help. Museums. Winter, I think was one of them. I mean, Gino, you saw that and you had to think, oh my God, Shane Gillis could have been played by Mike Danger in this scenario. Come on, Alexa, you can't be bad at golf and school. Let's go. No. It was perfect. Just absolutely perfect. So enjoy. Have a couple beers before you go to MoMA.
Beer, yeah.
And I'll have a release valve a month later when I go to see the Mets host the Diamondbacks with a couple of buddies at Citi Field.
Where are your seats? I would think that Odyssey seats, they got to be pretty decent.
I have no idea where the seats are, but yes, they will be Odyssey seats.
And I know I'm going to offend somebody, I'm sure, but Citi Field is superior to New Yankee Stadium.
Oh.
It just is.
Wow.
In terms of the experience and just how close you are and everything else.
I can't compare. I only went to Old Yankee Stadium. I have yet to go to New Yankee Stadium. Old Yankee Stadium was a treat. I really enjoyed it. I was there for one of the postseason games against the A's. I want to say it was when the A's beat them one postseason, right?
That's right.
2000-ish, 2001, 2000.
No, they jumped up in the series, and the Yankees go back, and that's the Jeter flipping the ball play, and they dig that. They rebound in 2001. That's the series I'm thinking.
Was 2000 the year before? Did they play the A's the year before in 2000? I feel like I might have been 2000, but it was against the A's, and they lost. I remember they lost the game that I was at.
Yeah, so the Yankees go to the World Series in 2000. That's when they beat the Mets in the Subway Series. They go to the Subway. They go to the World Series in 2001. They lose to the Diamondbacks.
That's right.
So
it wouldn't have been 2001 because that was post 9/11.
Okay, so this would have been 2000 then.
Yeah, so it had to have been 2000 because it was definitely pre 9/11. But I remember that game and I remember that atmosphere, and it was awesome. It was awesome to be there and be a part of that. I have not been to New Yankee Stadium yet, and I'm excited to go to Citi Field. Another one to check off the list. I'm kind of like that dorky guy that I would love to go to every major league ballpark and take it all in. Even St. Louis, you could convince me that would be a fun trip.
Now you're lying.
I would go.
Now you're lying.
I would go to St. Louis.
Come on.
Just so I could be around all those bandwagon fans.
There has to be like a point where I'm just too miserable. This happened right down the block here. Hey, I got tickets to a Nighthawk game. Great, I'm going to go. I realized, oh my gosh, all these idiot Buffalo Bandit fans are around me.
Yeah.
I have to move my seat. Like, you think it would be fun going to St. Louis. I don't know. Not so sure, buddy.
All right, let's get to the NFL here. With
where do we want to start?
Yeah, with news today. I mean, the most recent news today breaking here in the sports bar. Bengals placing the franchise tag for the second consecutive offseason on wide receiver T. Higgins, taking the most valuable potential free agent wide receiver off the board. That's the $26.2 million franchise tag on T. Higgins. And I would imagine that they're still going to work towards some sort of long-term agreement. However, for this season, $26.2 million for T. Higgins, I think if you're T. Higgins, you're probably okay with that. You don't have a long-term deal, but you've got your $26.2 guaranteed for this year.
I'm wondering, and this happened once before, do you remember Dave Gettleman franchise tagging Josh Norman, and then they couldn't work out a deal, and it's just some random summer day like, nope, tag is off, you're a free agent. Like, if I'm Higgins, I'm not signing. At this point, I am not signing anything that pays me short of being the highest paid wide receiver in the game today. Like, honestly.
Well, that's going to go to his teammate. We already know that.
Well, then, he can just do this year after year after year, be the Kirk Cousins, if you will, of wide receivers. I'm not. It would have to be a knock your socks sort of offer there in order to, like, me to sign long term there. Just do this year after year. $26 million for 1 year? Yeah, that's not bad at all.
Yeah.
You're not getting the big whatever signing bonus up front, but just put that next to the Buffalo Bills, how the Bills don't ever let it get to that point here. Like, the tag is a hostile move. It really is. Do you want to be here or no? If the answer is no, okay, we'll work something out in advance.
Well, they have until July 15th to get some sort of long-term deal done. In the meantime, we've heard reports that there is an offer in front of Jamar Chase, but the team and Chase aren't exactly close, and this is after the team has already said their plan is to make Chase the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. So we'll kind of continue to monitor that situation in Cincinnati. But this, again, yes, you're right. This feels like mismanagement of your assets when you're forced to use the franchise tag for a second year in a row. A team here trying to secure both Chase and Higgins, then Hendrickson on the defensive side of the ball, all looking for new money, looking for new deals. The Bills did today, by the way. There was a bit of an offseason move here made by a secondary player in Quentin Morris. He is set to hit free agency next week. They decided not to tender Morris as a restricted free agent. So unless they sign him to another deal between now and then, he will be an unrestricted free agent at the start of the new league year.
Which I think that's kind of surprising because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I think he could do a lot worse than Quentin Morris as a third tight end. But if that's a ceiling at this point, and people are pointing out, oh, well, he's valuable on special teams. Look, everybody on special teams should be under review. I'm not saying anything one way or another about Quentin Morris, but I'm just kind of laying out the reasons why I do think maybe you save a little bit of money by letting him go out there, and if he signs somewhere else, okay, that's fine. It's the third tight end on the team.
Right, and I think when you look at what it would have cost them to tender him at just over $3.2 million, is his production worth that? I would argue that it probably is not, and you can find somebody else. Who is the guy that was the camp darling last year? Is it Stevenson?
Oh, yeah, the tight end, right.
Yeah, there's another tight end that I know that had some size and that they kind of liked as well, that was battling with Morris all through last preseason. So Morris set to become an unrestricted free agent here next week when the league year gets underway. And then, of course, over the weekend, the other bit of NFL news, and this will become official when the league year does begin on the 12th, that would be the Niners deciding to move on from Deebo Samuel. Samuel heads to the Commanders, who, look, I mean, if you're the Washington Commanders and you made it to the NFC Championship game and you got a quarterback on his rookie deal, as electric as Jaden Daniels was in his rookie season, go all in. I mean, don't stop here. Get your pass rusher, too. Be in on Myles Garrett. But you're getting Deebo Samuel. I think the knock on Deebo here is can't stay healthy, maybe a little out of shape. And what are you actually going to get with this guy when he shows up in Washington?
Well, Deebo Samuel, okay, 1,700 receiving plus rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. Dude, that was 2021.
Yes.
Okay, so that is actually, we always have the picture of, wow, this is what it should look like. And then after that, you go from 1,400 to 632 yards, and you say, well, yeah, the injuries. Maybe he was playing hurt, misses 3 games, misses 2 in each of the next 2 years. So not extended. I mean, last 2 years combined, he's played 30 games. Plus the postseason 2 years ago. So he's been available, maybe not healthy in that regard, but he had one monster season. And you see the potential there. And then I understand why the Niners made this move. And if you're Washington, like you said, hey, you only teams that have that flexibility with not paying the quarterback can afford this sort of move.
Yeah. And for the Niners, look, you drafted Ricky Pearsall last year, and you expect that you'd get more out of him this upcoming season, provided he doesn't get shot. Right. But maybe you look at the Ayuk deal as well, and maybe Ayuk is somebody that you're considering a move from here as well if you're the Niners and you're completely trying to reshape what this all looks like if you're going to keep Brock Purdy and give him the long-term deal, making him your franchise quarterback. Who are you surrounding him with? It won't be Deebo Samuel. And I think there was a little bit of, the Niners situation last year, the way it unraveled. I mean, there were several little incidents where you're like, are they functional? Or is this going off the rails? It felt, I mean, they didn't get to where they wanted to go, obviously. They didn't make the postseason. But they had some issues. Remember when Dre Greenlaw came back and I'm blanking on the player that was playing for Greenlaw all season long and basically just quit on the team, didn't go in. I mean, like there's hints of dysfunction there with the Niners.
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan, his weekly press conferences devolved. It got really bitchy between he and the media. Not that it should matter, but just kind of gives you the tenor of what was going on out there. It just wasn't good. And that was a Niner team that came to Buffalo, and this will happen sometimes where you get the West Coast team coming, especially that time of year. They didn't look like they wanted to be there. No, I'm sorry. Christian McCaffrey goes out in that game early, and that offense isn't Brock Purdy. It was McCaffrey. And how many more years can you get on McCaffrey? You're hoping maybe one, if that. But like you said, you're hoping that Pearsall can kind of step into that role. We didn't get too much out of him last season.
We put a bow on the NFL scouting combine. Mike Catalana, 13 Web Sports, Buffalo Plus, is going to join us next here in the sports bar. We could talk about what he took in, and he was also kind of like part of our conversation last week is, who is Sean McDermott? Who is this coach that's making dad jokes in the backdrop of a stand-up shop between Mike Catalana and Dan Fates from Buffalo Plus? But some takeaways from this weekend that I think are worth mentioning here in terms of players that have kind of seen their stock rise before the draft, maybe a few that have seen their stock fall. What does it all mean for the Buffalo Bills, and what direction could they be leaning, and who did they talk to when they had the opportunity to talk to them in Indianapolis? We know that Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, mentioned that he had an interview with the Buffalo Bills and that went well. So there's a lot to unpack from the week that was the NFL Scouting Combine, and we like to do it with the Hall of Famer, with Mike Catalana, 13 Web Sports and Buffalo Plus. Yeah,
so we appreciate Mike's time. We'll also catch up with Russell Brown next hour, give a combine recap. We'll have time for your calls also at 866-4FAN, 866-4326.
You mentioned it, Chino. That's the Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub Wingman line. Award-winning barbecue from Good Smoke Barbecue and Pub at 135 West Commercial Street in East Rochester. GoodSmokeBBQ.com.
You're listening to the Did your smart speaker play ambient noise when you asked for sports news? Time for an upgrade. Tell it to play 95.7 The Fan and turn those static noises into thrilling play-by-plays. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Sabres hockey tonight. Buffalo looking to snap a 2-game slide. They play in Montreal. Our coverage will begin at 7 o'clock. Devin Levi named the AHL Goaltender of the Month for February. Khalil Shakir back in Buffalo today talking about his new deal.
Just to kind of see it all come together. Before it was announced the night before is when it was like, all right, cool, got the final call. And it's just been like a crazy feeling since. Like, I don't really know how to feel. Obviously super excited and stuff like that, but it feels surreal.
We'll talk some Bills football and the Combine. 13 Wham and Buffalo Plus's Mike Catalana joining us next year in the Sports Bar. Cincinnati Bengals announcing they will use the franchise tag again on wide receiver T. Higgins with no long-term deal. Higgins will make $26 million next season. Philadelphia Eagles to release corner Darius Slay. Gene Battaglia in the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
Straight up with no chaser. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Yeah, they're going to do something with Vaughn. Who knows what it's going to be? No telling. I think they have appreciated him, and he's done nothing but be a good soldier. I mean, he took a pay cut.
$8.5 million last year.
Yeah, that's not nothing.
There's Steve Tasker, Chris Brown earlier today, One Bills Live, talking about the future of Von Miller with the Buffalo Bills, looking to get cap compliant as the league season gets underway here shortly. And fresh off the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, we welcome in the Hall of Famer from 13 Wham Sports and Buffalo Plus, Mike Catalana. And Mike, it's not lost on most of us that a lot of people were talking about a simple stand-up shot that you and Dan were doing when Sean McDermott all of a sudden goes full-on dad joke mode in the background of your shot, has some fun with you guys. Who is this man, this coach of the Buffalo Bills, showing a sense of humor and a personality that we haven't seen since Snow Angels against the San Francisco 49ers?
We talk about this a lot where we say, off-season Sean's a little different. And I get it, too. You're coaching the team the regular season. You're pretty busy. And he sort of hits that, like, preseason, like right during camp, you can tell when he's moving into that mode. But that really stunned me, to be honest with you. He was in a good mood. The PR people kept pushing him along. They're like, Sean's got to go. So we were like, all right, we're moving along. He didn't have to go anywhere. And then he stayed and talked with us for another 10 minutes afterward, talking about kids, the grandkids, all this stuff. So off-season Sean is a fun guy.
That's interesting. I mean, part of it. Here's my theory, Mike. I want to run it by you.
Okay.
He minored in theater. I mean, is off-season Sean just more the real Sean? And hey, I know I got to play this role of football coach, and this was a young team that I was taking over, and I believe in discipline, and that doesn't kind of marry up with who I really am here. So I need to play this role of football coach.
No, I don't think he feels like I got to play a role. I think Sean is who he is as a coach. I think who he is as a dad and at home and with their friends. I just don't think he shows that very often in that setting. Because, people react and overreact to things. I guarantee you that if you looked at the comments, there's somebody who's like, he's got to pay more attention so they know who to dress. I mean, it's like the idiots. First of all, he even said at the beginning of the thing, somebody asked him about the wide receivers. He goes, I know 0.0 about the wide receivers. Yeah. Brandon, I asked him about what's your role here. He's like, it's Brandon's draft. Now, he gets involved in stuff. He gets to meet with the players. He has an opinion at some point, but it's Bean's draft. It's what it is. So, no, I think he's a somewhat guarded guy because he's so public with everything else. But then I would say in the last year plus, he's been a little bit different that way. He probably figures this is, I can show this a little bit, and then I'll get ready for football.
Let's talk a little bit about Bean's roster here because there's been a few things that have occurred over the course of the last couple of weeks. Let's start with James Cook. I mean, we heard both men heap praise on the Bills' star running back, but also Brandon Bean. I have to imagine that he's putting on a face for the media and might be seething inside knowing that James Cook took publicly to social media with his contract demands. What do you think happens with this? How do you think this all resolves itself and plays out?
So I would think in Bean's concern meter on a 1 to 10 on James Cook especially about the post, is at about a 2.5.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think it really phases him. Like he said, sure, I would rather this not play out. But James Cook ain't giving $15 million. He knows it. His agent knows it. Like, he wasn't that player. He's a very good player. He had half the yards that Saquon Barkley had. Okay? He doesn't play. I think they have a value for him. They'll have a very nice value for him. They would probably like to extend him. I think at some point James Cook's going to realize his value now and then say to himself, what would I have to put up this year to get that kind of deal somewhere else and go into free agency? They haven't re-signed any of these backs before. I think they'd like to sign Cook, but the Bills have a value for him. I don't think him putting something on Instagram really phases Brandon Beane much. Now, if it continued, if it was like every week he's doing something, going on shows, saying something, that would bug him. The thing he did, I think he sort of laughed it off. And in my 2 cents is, hey, James, what are you doing this in February when there's free agency in the draft where they could pick or sign somebody to replace you? Wait till June. Wait till they don't take a back before you start mouthing off. So that's just my 2 cents. He's going to get paid at some point. I think it's be the value that they would agree on, but nobody's going to be at $15 million a year. It's just not going to happen.
Mike Catalana, 13 Wham and Buffalo Plus. When you're out there at the combine, it's not only the draft, but it's kind of the appetizer. It's the, hey, we can't really talk about a deal, but what would you think? My question is this, because you always want to go into the draft not having any needs, and I think the Bills kind of painted themselves into a corner a few years ago at corner, and that's how you ended up with Kaiir Elam. What are the chances here, Mike, that the Bills could fill all their needs, so to speak, whether that's defensive line, whether that is another corner or a safety? What are the chances the Bills can fill all those needs before we hit the draft?
All right, Gene, I'm only going to say this because I think it's more semantics than anything. But you said fill the needs, and I would say address the needs, because it's hard to expect a rookie to fill that need, right? Can contribute sometimes more than others, right? You look on the O-line, Torrance went right in, started every game. Like, there you not only addressed it, you filled it. Keon Coleman didn't fill a need last year. I mean, he was okay in spots, but didn't fill a need. I would say there are many positions they have to address. And I think they've gotten themselves in a spot where they feel a little, I won't say desperate is a word, but picking, like, when they picked Kaiir Elam, it was kind of like they didn't move up. They're sitting there, and then they take a corner, and they took the wrong corner. And I think there were probably better players. Heck, the one time Beane didn't really go for need is when he took Boogie Basham in the second round, and that was a disaster. So, the idea is pick the right player. But, look, if they don't make a deal, I think they need to draft a corner. I think they definitely need to draft on the D-line, multiple players on the D-line in a year where it's pretty strong. And I think there's a very real possibility they take a safety, too. Plus, we still have wide receiver. And I know they'd look for probably somebody in free agency or a trade still too. But they got a decent amount. I think honestly, if you look at those positions and try to take the best player and hope to get them in there quickly, I think that's the best route, and not to reach just because you say, oh man, we really need a pass rusher, so we're going to take player X because he's still on the board.
Let's look at corner specifically, because we spent some time last week discussing what this could all look like in terms of them addressing needs in free agency or in the draft, and then looking at what they already have. We kind of assume that Rasul Douglas isn't going to come back as he hits the market, but you still have Kaiir Elam, who you mentioned, and why do I get the sense that even if they do draft, invest highly in a draft pick at corner, that you're going to hear a lot of Kaiir Elam when we get to St. John Fisher about how he looks and how he's getting an opportunity to earn the right to be a starter on this team again?
Yeah, I'm guilty of it too. All of us. I mean, we watched Kyer. He seemed like a different guy. He was fired up. He was playing a noticeable corner, like especially in the spring when we would see him, and then certainly at Fisher, and he looked like that guy. But, I'm kind of saying to myself, what do they need to see? I mean, when they needed him, they gave up a ton in the Detroit game. That was a bit of a surprise that they went with him in that game. They gave up a ton in that game. I thought maybe Ingram would start. That obviously was not the case. And then they were forced to put him in there in the playoff game, and he was not good at all. And I just wonder if, how long they hold on to that. I would like to see them revamp the position in that way outside of Benford. And I think Ingram can be a backup for them, and that's fine. Maybe you bring back somebody or look at a certain type of free agent. But I would not mind seeing them use a relatively early pick. Let's pretend they don't make a major move and they have their picks, which would be 2 in the second round. Somewhere in those first 3 picks, I'd like to see them take a young corner and maybe somebody, just the physical ability is a little stronger, a little faster, a little tougher. All those things that they have lacked at that position to this point. So, but I'm with you. I'm still surprised he's on the roster. I was surprised coming into camp last year, though he looked like he could be better. But they can't count on him at all. They've gotten opportunities to play. They changed coaches, and he still can't play. So at some point, they've got to cut bait here.
Mike, before we get to free agency, my gosh, you go back to this time last year, it was a bloodbath. You had Mitch Morse. I could go over the names, Trey White. The Bills still do have a little bit of work here to do to get cap compliant. Is it a foregone conclusion that Von Miller isn't on this team?
No.
No, okay.
No, I don't think that's foregone at all. I still think there's the possibility that they try to work something out to give him another cut and – make it a contract that makes sense for him and makes sense for them because of the amount of money that's still on the cap for next year. This is where I say this when we always talk about the cap not being real. And there are some people who, they just can't figure this part out when we try to explain to them that the idea of when we say that is it's because you can manipulate the cap. But when you make mistakes on contracts, especially bigger ones, and you get rid of players or need to move on from players that you expected to be around for a while, that's when you have to pay the price for it. And that's what happened in the Von deal. It was a big deal, and there's time left on it. But if they go to Von, here's a cut. Do you want this now? I think either he takes that or they move on from him. So I do think there is a place where he takes a little less, maybe more in the guarantee. They end up guaranteeing that money, and it cuts back what they owe in the cap because they'd still have a sizable cap hit for next year, and they'd still need another pass rusher. So it could happen. It could happen this afternoon that they say we're moving on from him. I think they could present those options to him. He took it last year. Let's be honest. On the open market, at what is he, 36 years old? I don't know what he's getting. Yeah. I don't see a team. Certainly nobody's breaking the bank for him. So I think they have to be smart with it. But to your point, it could happen. They could just say, it's not working, he's gone, we bite the bullet and move on. But I think there's still a place where they redo the deal.
Khalil Shakir was heard from earlier today, Mike, and on the heels of his extension, which I think is a good deal for the Bills, not necessarily an overpay. And when you look at how the market is going to get reset when guys like Chase gets his deal, this is going to look like a bargain here in the next couple of years as far as what you're getting out of Khalil Shakir. However, and we mentioned the talk about Keon Coleman not being that guy that you wanted to fill a need. Not you addressed a need, but he didn't fill a need. You still need a wide receiver one. Did you get the sense that that player might reside in Indianapolis this last week at the Combine, that the Bills might have eyes for somebody who could come in and be a wide receiver one for this team?
It's funny. We talk about wide receiver one, and I guess that could be the case. I think of it as much positionally. I think of it a player who could play on the outside and make some plays for him. I mean, Matt Collins played that role a lot, and that tells you something. And he catch 6 touchdowns, I think, including the playoffs. And he got deep, and he made great play in the championship game, and that's Mac Hollins. But they didn't really – I don't know if Keon is even really fit to play that spot. That's, to me, what it is. Now, when we say number one, because I think we've always thought, and rightfully so, it's a player on the outside who can get down the field, make big plays, and is great. I mean, Shakir may end up being their best receiver, and he plays more inside, right? It could end up being. We don't know what his top end is. But, man, I just feel like they need that guy, and that guy's not on the roster. And so, to your point, it may be a player who isn't a 1,500 a year yard player, but somebody who can play that X spot and play on the outside and contribute. That's why I was, that's the thing about Coleman. They sort of want to put him there, and I don't think he's that player unless he comes back a lot different next year. So I think there is players they're interested in. I don't think they would make that decision in the first round this year. I think it would be later. But, again, this could all come into play if they don't make a major move. If they make a major move and give up the draft picks, then it's a different story. Then it's mostly in free agency or a trade to try to bring somebody in.
Well, what would you do, Mike? Because there are going to be big names, and you can't go online and say, oh, well, wait a second, Davante Adams might be available, or, wow, there's a report out of Seattle that says that there's been talks between the Seahawks and the Bills about DK Metcalf. Are you taking a swing in that direction, or are you looking just to draft you missed out on Worthy. There's the kid from Texas perhaps you can go get.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've always thought Metcalf would be a good fit for the Bills. He can, maybe Josh would really throw the deep ball better if he had DK Metcalf running down there on the field. It depends on how you want to structure it and doing it. Davante Adams, I think he still has something left in him, but it depends on what kind of a deal you could make. I don't know if they're going to give up money. Well, that would be more money. One would be money and assets. I think that comes on the defensive side if they're really going to give up something. But there are players out there. And the other part about this is teams draft players, teams sign players, and then they move on from veterans. And you look at happened to be the thing with Debo that just went on. Now, I don't think Debo fit-wise would have been a good one for the Bills, but that type of player who has been around and maybe you get him on a manageable contract for a limited number of time and you see what you have out there. But I guess Davante Adams would help them. They went that route, a different player with Amari Cooper, and it didn't really work out. A player, and he's got a few more years on him. So I always have held out that thought about DK Metcalf seeming to fit with the Bills, but we'll see what they're looking for and see if the Bills are interested. But I think at some point they got to take a speed guy, just take somebody who can run. It's funny they talked about speed in Indy. And I'm like, yeah, you had that guy sitting on the board when you came up for a pick and you didn't take him. Right. So let's see if they do this time.
Mike, we're kind of led to believe with the Shakir extension that maybe the other guys that are up for an extension have deals in front of them and they're just working out the finer details. And that, what order do you think we see some of these guys on expiring years or going into the last year of their deal? When do you think we start to hear between now and the start of the league year? And who do you think is on deck here after Shakir's extension?
Yeah, it'd be honestly, it would be fascinating if they had all of them done before the league year.
Right.
Like that's a lot of work and
a
lot of
they've done that before, right? I feel like there's been deals with Milano or AJ Epineza, or they take care of their guys before it all gets going.
They do, but it's the plus of that draft because that draft ended up being at that end of it pretty good, right? And you've got all these guys in the fourth year, and they all got bumps this year because of improved play through the way the Players Association deal works, but not to that point. I would say, no question in my mind, Benford would be 2. I would say Bernard 3, and I would say Cook 4. And I like Cook, and I think he was really good, and he was a playmaker, but I would put all those other guys ahead of him. I would prioritize the other players. Now, some of it you have to look at is like if Benford gets to a point where he's looking at the open market at a corner spot, that's a very real thing because there'd be big money out there for a corner, starting corner. So that now if you let him get into the season, he's playing well. His agent is saying, hold on, like you're going to get a big deal play this out, that then you're playing, I don't say playing with fire, but you are putting yourself in that spot. And Bean even said, we've done it before where we've waited, done it during the rest of the spring, done it after the draft, done it during training camp, like whenever they get those deals done. But I just looked at Cook still. I know backs became more important and some backs were great, but I still would prioritize him last in that group. I just would because of the position that he plays, and you got 17 next to you. So you're not going to be a running team. You're going to need a back, but I just don't think they're going to break the bank for him.
You didn't mention Rousseau.
Yeah, the Rousseau one is interesting. I like Rousseau. And I get pushback from Dan especially, and sometimes from Jana on Rousseau because I look at it and say, well, he hasn't put up huge numbers, almost in the same way I look at Shakir. And I'm like, yeah, because he hasn't exactly been, he had a little bit of digs there, but he wasn't in as big a role. But it's like he's out there as more of a number one guy without a number one guy on the roster. And his numbers are good. I think we all believe they can be better. I think the team believes that. Rousseau's put up decent numbers, but he had nobody on the other side. I mean, there was nothing there. Now, all that being said, he's making what this year? $13 million on the fifth-year option, I think it is. And so I'd let him play it. I'd let him play it out. And there's a chance that, who knows, he plays great and gets 13 sacks, and the team says, thanks for all your work. We can't afford you. And somebody pays him like Tremaine Edmonds got paid, and he gets money. And then you say, okay. And I think there's a very real possibility that happens. Heck, he could have 9 sacks and get that too. You know the way some teams are. They're just going to look for a guy. But it almost gives them that year. And then I guess there's always the possibility that they could still work something out. But I think they're getting him it's almost like you franchise tagged him in terms of the money. It's less, but it's that 1-year guarantee. So I don't think they're looking right now to extend him. If you're him, I don't think you do it unless it's a lot of money, because somebody in this league will pay for a pass rusher, and you'll get paid.
Mike, last one from me, and it's about the top of the draft. We were having this conversation last week about the Giants, and all right, the Giants get shut out. Their pursuit of Matthew Stafford. So we're having a conversation. Where do they go from here? And if you're a GM and a head coach they know they're on the hot seat, is it better for them to win games now, or maybe take a quarterback maybe they're not 100% sure on? Where do you think the Giants go from here in terms of the quarterback?
I think the worst spot a franchise can be in is a desperate general manager, right? Because this idea of, even hearing, and I guess you got to look at anybody, but even hearing they're interested in some way in Aaron Rodgers if I'm a Giants fan, I'm sitting there going, you didn't want to bring Barkley back because you felt like the team wasn't there yet, and you're not going to pay a running back. And then you're going to turn around and bring in a 41-year-old quarterback who decimated a franchise right in the same town. They're really in a bad spot. Unless they want to take Sanders and take him early, I guess they probably could. I don't think they love him. I think most people evaluating the quarterbacks don't think either of these guys would have been in the top, they would have been 5 or 6 in terms of the way they would have been judged from last year. They've really put themselves in a bad spot, I think. They don't have a quarterback. They've already, overpaid one. They end up with another high pick, and they've used them for wide receivers, defensive backs, running backs. They've only taken one quarterback in that whole time, and it was Daniel Jones. So this franchise in general has done a terrible job. I think they're kind of stuck. But the only thing worse than signing a bad veteran for a year or two is drafting the wrong quarterback in the first round, because you got to invest probably a few years in them, and it's a mess. So, Joe Shane's in a tough spot, I would say, and Brian Dable. And that's why I say I just don't think it's great to have guys in. I don't think you can get a clear view of what you want to do if a guy, quote, got to win this year and he's going to make decisions based on that. Look at it this way. Say you wanted to move up and take Cam Ward. and you have to give up next year's number one. Is that what you want to do as the Giants, to do something like that and leave the franchise in that spot? So I think they put themselves in a bad spot. They may be better off taking the best player available and hoping that the thing turns around a little bit. Maybe they sign a veteran, and I don't know who's out there. Russell Wilson, like something like that. I don't know. But I don't think I'd bring Aaron Rodgers into the building.
Mike, welcome back to Rochester. Hope you had a great time in Indianapolis. Thank you for giving us some time before we let you go. Let everybody know about what you guys are working on this week at Buffalo Plus.
Yeah, Buffalo Plus. We ended up, Dan and I got a lot of great content with different people around the league, some national, some local, on the Patriots, on the Jets, on the Dolphins. So we're going to have part of that in our podcast. Jenna's up now. She was up at the Khalil Shakir news conference today, which was good. So we'll be putting together our podcast for this week. And, I mean, what is it, a week from today when the legal tampering time starts? There's Oh, by the way, just so you guys know, there was illegal tampering in Indy.
Wow.
Yeah, there always is. Like, you see everybody. They're all talking. Doesn't mean they're breaking any rules, but they might be.
Do they talk to you, like, perspective? When you got into this, you'd always have Chris Berman. Hey, I know who the Bills are taking my cabbie. I talked to the cabbie. Does an agent, does anybody try to play you or anybody in the media just to, sway things one way or another?
There are people who you can tell where it's coming from. Most of the time they do that stuff with the national guys, right? They just do. And you read it. I mean, please. NFL Network, you can just, a lot of the stuff they say is kind of comical. It's like, they push anything that makes the league look good. They love to say, some of their people. So when you see that, it's coming from the league or it's coming from an agent, and they're, just playing it that way. I don't think anybody, I would tell you this, you guys know, man, the minute this group came in, the leaks with the Bills pretty much shut down. They did. I mean, there ain't a lot of leaking going on with this team and anything. And you see, I saw the report that the Bills would be in on Myles Garrett. Well, yeah. I mean, that isn't exactly breaking news. I mean, I think, Bean is saying everything he can say without talking about a player who's under contract to another team. But I don't think that's earth-shattering. I think they're going to test the waters with all those guys. But nobody is calling us up and saying, this is the guy we're picking. I mean, you can read into it a little bit, but they're pretty tight-lipped in that way. They don't stuff gets out, but that doesn't come from one Bills drive.
Well, Mike, appreciate the time. Let's get together again here before we get to the end of April and the NFL draft. I'm sure there'll be plenty of news breaking around this team as the new league year gets underway, and welcome back into town.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care.
There he is. Mike Catalana, 13 Wham Sports, Buffalo
What?
Plus.
What? There was no dig on the Mets? Nothing?
We're talking football.
I know, but usually he's the one at the end of that.
Maybe he got his digs on with you before we got on the air. Maybe that's what it was.
He wanted to know, you're going to a Met game.
Yeah.
Had the Bears done this to you? That was his concern.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the concern, Mike. It's nice that you're looking out for us. We'll have Russell Brown, NFL draft analyst for Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, joining us here in the Sports Bar next hour, and we'll put a bow on the NFL Scouting Combine, talk risers, fallers, and everything that Russ observed while he was there in Indianapolis as well. We're going to take a break here. I'm going to tell you the team that I believe is making a gigantic mistake in terms of their quarterback decision here this offseason.
And one thing we want more of in sports, rivalries, hate on the field, right? Boy, there's something coming up for the Bills next year, and I'm just wondering if this is a window into perhaps making a rivalry even better, and I'll explain.
We'll get to your calls as well if you want to join us, 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester, sports update.
Sabres on the road here as they are in Montreal tonight. Our coverage will begin at 7 o'clock here on The Fan. Devin Levi, well, he'll be in the suburb of Laval coming up this weekend. That's where the Amerks are. Levi named the AHL Goaltender of the Month for February. Khalil Shakir back in Buffalo today talking about his new contract. Shakir thankful for a guy like number 17.
Just how thankful I am to play with him and that he's my quarterback, and just told him, like, and I mean it, like my success is from him, and I truly mean that, him trusting me, throwing me the ball. Like I said before, he's one of a kind, and to be able to continue to play with him is special.
Meanwhile, in Cincinnati, the Bengals announcing they're going to use the tag again on wide receiver T. Higgins with no long-term deal. Higgins will make $26 million this season. Former Cowboys head coach Jimmy Johnson retires from Fox Sports. Gene Battaglia and the sports leader, The Fan, Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Lofts one right down the middle. This one is caught by Shakir at the 3. Heads into the end zone. Yet another Buffalo touchdown.
We're 9 days.
9 times.
From the start of the new league year. 7 days from the legal tampering period.
Top 5 rumors I heard at the NFL Scouting Combine.
Mike Danger.
If you're about to enjoy a single serving item, enjoy the whole thing. If you're indulging in a single serving food, commit to the cause. No half-eaten single serving items. I don't understand that.
Gene Battaglia.
Danger, I realize this. If I just say it's my opinion, I can't get in trouble.
That's right.
It's my opinion that there's some ulterior motives. That's all I'll say. It's my opinion. I think Chris Leverage would agree with Mike Danger's take on this.
That's right.
And the Oscar goes to
95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
What's that show you wanted me to watch? Severance?
Yes.
I actually dug into it a little bit. I didn't watch the show, but I'm like, what? Tell me about Severance. And Severance is...
Wait. What?
I was just
you were
curious.
Wait a second. I said this show, and you said you would add it to the list, and now...
I'm not watching it.
But you're still considering.
I just wanted to learn more about it. I'm like, tell me what this show is about. Because you said I remind you of a character on that show. That there's a character on that show that is me.
Not exactly.
What did you say?
So the premise. Sorry if I'm spoiling.
No, I know. I was
going
to spoil it before you did.
Okay, so the premise of Severance is there's this bio company that develops this chip, and you can have it placed in your brain. Now, stop right there. I've read things like this, right, that can make you superhuman. But the purpose of this chip is for better home work balance. We all talk about that.
Yeah.
So basically, when you're at work, you don't remember anything about your other life. You're just there to work, and you're going to be more productive. And when you walk out the door, you don't even know what you do at home. So you could imagine what could go wrong from there. That's the whole show. You have
that could
two
be my
different-
life.
Yeah, that is your life.
That could be a case study for that show. That feels pretty accurate. You know what what could remedy that? Couple of beers. Just a couple of beers. Just a couple of beers, I think, would remedy all of that. Make everything a little bit better. We're going to talk to Russell Brown, NFL draft analyst for Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros. He's stopping by the sports bar here in about 15 minutes, and we'll put a bow on the NFL scouting combine, risers and fallers. Oh, Will Howard, not great. Wins a national championship, but no, not great. Jackson Dart, can't win a big game, but whoa. Did you see how he threw the ball this weekend as well? So we'll get to some of that with Russell Brown. And speaking of quarterbacks in this year's NFL draft, who is the best quarterback in this year's draft? Because I would say, if you look at it from a wider lens, it's not Shador, it's not Cam Ward. While Jackson Dart was nice at the combine, he's not the answer either. The answer is J.J. McCarthy, Gino. J.J. McCarthy, coming off his redshirt season with the Vikings, as someone who roots for chaos, the Vikings are about to blow it right here with Sam Darnold, coming off a 14-win season, who's unlikely to be franchise tagged by the Vikings. There is no way you can sell me on J.J. McCarthy. While he might be the best quarterback available to somebody, if you wanted him, in this year's draft, if he was available in the draft, he would be the number one quarterback in this draft. But there's no way that you can sell me on the idea of him replicating the results of the Minnesota Vikings in 2025 from 2024. They're not getting 14 wins with McCarthy as their quarterback. I'm not going to tell you that Darnold is going to find success with the team that eventually acquires him in free agency either, but the Vikings should absolutely keep Darnold as their franchise quarterback, and they should absolutely shop McCarthy to any of the teams looking to draft an inferior player in the first round.
Well, that is if they don't believe in McCarthy. It wasn't like they got just a little taste there in the spring and then all of a sudden he got hurt. They went through all the spring. They went through training camp. They saw him in a preseason game where he looked pretty darn good. Again, it was a good Raiders preseason game, but it's not a who cares. I think there's something there with that kid. What you're saying is absolutely true. You just don't let an asset like that, particularly at that position, just kind of walk out the door. And okay, you're going to be saddled with this number that you're going to have to pay Sam Darnold with. Do you want to win games or not? And when you get to that time, it's not like maybe you could trade Darnold. Maybe that's the other way. There's nothing wrong with either one of those guys, Danger, being dealt. But who's the best quarterback in this draft? You're just saying basically, hey, you're the Giants. Pick up the phone and try to. Yeah,
that's right. I'm saying if McCarthy was in this draft, and let's just treat him as if he's an unproven commodity, because he is. Would he be the best quarterback in this year's draft? He would. He would be better than Sanders. He would be better than Jackson Dart. He would be better than Cam Ward. And I would, if I was the Giants or if I was the Raiders, I would be asking, what would it take?
History tells us, and maybe we can ask Russell Brown this. Quarterbacks where, all right, we know as a collective this isn't a great year. Guess what? They don't pan out. A few years ago, it's not a great quarterback draft class, but Pittsburgh can't make the same mistake again. Okay, well, all right, they drafted Kenny Pickett. Didn't work. Well, the Bills really need a quarterback. It's not a great class. You drafted E.J. Manuel. So
I wonder how many teams are going to go into this season just saying, you know what, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to tank and hope that we can get Manning. That's really the prize. Like, if we can get Manning, if we get Arch Manning, we're in good shape. That's all we really want. 2025 is a wash. We're going to tank, and that's the prize. Like, there has to be more.
Honestly, is he that good though?
There has to be more than a couple of teams. Even if he isn't what his uncle is, he's going to be the greatest provider of hope for a downtrodden franchise that they've ever had, whether it's the Giants or the Raiders or the Browns, whoever it is. Yeah, the tank for Arch Manning is happening right now. Has to be. They have to be thinking that way.
Mike Catalana, if you missed it, he was great. He's right. Like a GM that doesn't have the security and you're operating from I need to stick around.
Giants are a mess.
Oh, boy. Yeah,
Giants are a mess, and Giants fans' heads are a mess as well, because I've seen more than a few that are actually excited about the prospect of Aaron Rodgers. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? How do you think that that's going to play out for you?
If you're the Giants, what you should do is draft Abdul Carter. Honestly, and then maybe you take McCord in the second round or something like that later on. You're going to draft a quarterback, but no, we know Danger. I think Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, far from a safe bet there at the top of the draft.
Far from a safe bet. They could pan out. They could be great. Cam Ward might be the one guy that I would say, okay, he could be a franchise guy. Shedeur, for as athletic as he is, what you hear, you just think, guys, I don't know if he's a leader. You know, like, is that a guy that's going to lead a locker room, or is he on a different plane because of who he is and where he comes from? But the idea of Warren, I'd listen to the idea of Ward potentially being a franchise guy, but that's not a guarantee. It's far from a guarantee. And for that matter, I think it's far from a guarantee that McCarthy is either. But I just think if you're the Vikings, that's a guy that's not going to move you forward this year. You're not going to get 14 wins with J.J. McCarthy. And at least with Sam Darnold, you can have another year of McCarthy learning. You take a page out of Green Bay, who's done this for generations. You have a quarterback that you've invested in, but let him sit, let him learn, let him marinate. Nothing wrong with that.
Who's the head coach like better? If you think
it's just the head coach, that's a different story. I don't think it's the head coach. This is where the meddlesome owner bit comes into play, right? If you're the
Ziggy Wilf or whatever,
if you're the meddlesome owner, then you're saying, "Hey, we invested a first-round pick. Let's get the kid out there." Okay, all right, pops, whatever you want, whatever you say. But I just got 14 wins out of this guy that nobody wanted on their team. Maybe that's worth something. I don't know. We'll see.
We've been saying this. Sports needs more rivalries, right?
Yes.
More bad blood. Georgetown-Syracuse danger used to be something. What helped to spark this way back when? Brief history lesson. At the beginning of the Big East, it's the final home game ever for the Syracuse Orangemen, as they were called at the time, at Manley Fieldhouse. This is before the Dome. Georgetown comes in and wins the game. And then post-game, Hoyas head coach John Thompson just gets up there at the podium, makes this declaration: Manley Fieldhouse is now closed. That was it. It's legendary, right? Imagine that if you're a Georgetown fan, you're fired up, and you can understand why Syracuse fans, that didn't rub them the wrong way. Just bringing the story up because you're going to hear a lot about this one final season for the Buffalo Bills at Old Highmark, as I'm sure that's what we'll end up calling it, Old Highmark. You have to keep winning at home. Say the Bills lose a playoff game at home. Danger, I'll ask you the question here, how much we've lost in rivalries. Could you imagine any coach today in 2025 or by that point 2026 saying Highmark Stadium is now closed?
Yeah, it'd be disrespectful. I think maybe the Harbaughs could pull that one off. The Harbaughs could. I don't know that I would do. Andy Reid would do that.
Andy Reid wouldn't do that.
No. Sean Payton.
Yes.
Sean Payton is arrogant enough to do that.
Yeah. And Payton McDermott, they don't, going back to Carolina and New Orleans, they don't like each other.
This whole point is ridiculous, though, because the Bills aren't going to lose a game this upcoming season at Highmark. It doesn't matter if they're in the postseason. They're going to go undefeated at home again the final season at Highmark.
And it still wasn't enough.
And it still wasn't enough.
You still, think about that. You still had to go to Kansas City in the end.
Yep. Wasn't enough. Yeah, but they're not going to lose. They'll go undefeated at home again this year. Their bold prediction for 2025, and it's just the beginning of March. The Bills will go undefeated again.
We keep saying this. We have to go back to our 2024. We have to do that before the league calendar year.
Yeah,
Can we get that? Yeah.
We absolutely should. You know what? I had some fun. I had the AIs go in and look at our bold predictions and give us a score. I just wanted to see what does the AI say about our score? Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? Because we always go back and review them, and then we kind of like go, you kind of got it right. Oh, you're partially right on that. Like, I thought the Giants would be picking first, but I predicted that they were going to be a terrible team.
I think you get that one.
I predicted that the Steelers were going to miss the postseason and have a losing record. They made the postseason. They didn't have a losing record. But everything that went into that prediction as far as the schedule and how it played out, yeah, I kind of nailed it. I don't know. So I was just curious, what do the AIs say about our bold predictions and how did we score in the eyes of the computers? We can get to that whenever you want, Gino. That'll be a fun exercise, as it always is, to go back and recap some of our 2024 bold predictions from the NFL. I want to say that in the NFC, I got the entire field right for the postseason, with the exception of those damn Minnesota Vikings. I think I had every team in the postseason right for the NFC, with the exception of the Vikings. I had the Niners making it in instead of the Vikings.
You did do the AI.
I told you.
You did do them.
Yeah. No, I wasn't making that up. I wanted the computers. I wanted the computers to give us a score.
I'm like, wait a second. You did do this.
I wanted the computers to give us a score. You're looking at it right now.
Yeah.
I can see that you didn't believe me. I'm like, tell me how we did. How did we do? Lay it out for us. And it did. So we can review that whenever you want. It's ready. It's ready for us. Yeah, you're right. We should do it maybe.
Well, it's fun. Yeah, I'm
Before
reading
the
one
week
right
is up.
now. Like, I thought I missed on one, but AI says I'm right.
Which one was that?
Tampa Bay relocation talk.
Oh, yeah. You're ahead of the curve on that one.
I guess AI is saying, Gene, this is happening.
Yeah,
Really? Okay.
You're ahead of the curve on that one. Nobody's talking about it, but yeah, because nobody's talking about it, technically you're way ahead of the curve on that one. You're not too wrong. Let's get to Russell Brown. He covers the NFL draft for Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. We'll get his thoughts on Indianapolis and the NFL Scouting Combine, who rose, who fell, as we get ready for the NFL Draft here at the end of April, the start of the league year and free agency. Always consider Russ a nice resource for us, especially when it comes to the NFL Draft. We'll get to him next here on The Fan Rochester.
Sports Update.
Sabres looking to snap a 2-game slide tonight. They play up in Montreal. Our coverage will begin at 7 here on The Fan. Devin Levi named the AHL Goaltender of the Month for February. Khalil Shakir back in West New York today at the team facility talking about his new deal.
Just to kind of see it all come together. Before it was announced the night before is when it was like, all right, cool, got the final call. And it's just been like a crazy feeling since. Like, I don't really know how to feel. Obviously super excited and stuff like that, but it feels surreal.
Meanwhile, Cincinnati Bengals announcing they're going to use the tag again on T. Higgins. With no long-term deal, Higgins will make $26 million in 2025. Philadelphia Eagles set to release corner Darius Slay. Former Cowboys head coach Jimmy Johnson retiring from Fox Sports. Gene Battaglin, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
The beer is cold and the wings are hot. You're in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
NFL scouting combine comes to a close. We now shift our gaze to free agency, the start of the league year, and of course the NFL draft. And when we talk about these prospects and everything that went down in Indianapolis over the last 7 days, we bring in our favorite, Russell Brown, NFL draft analyst, fantasy pros, and betting pros. Good with this time to join us here in the sports bar. How was your time in Indy, Russ?
It was good. Everything was good. It was always. It's just such a fun time. I mean, there's nothing better than being around a bunch of scouts, bunch of people like myself that cover the game, and just picking up on the tea leaves. But it was a lot of fun. How's everything with you guys?
You know, Russ, we're just waiting for winter to end.
I hear you.
It's funny, like, our fan base here in Western New York kind of stinging a little bit, just like I'm sure the Lions fan base is. But it's a magical thing, the way the NFL kind of puts us through this cycle because, all right, we're that hurt. Well, a month has gone by. You know what? I think we're ready for the next year here, Russ.
Oh, absolutely. I think, when you look at the weather from last week where it was 50 degrees to now, and now it's back to 18 to 20, you're like, let's just get back to football season. I've had enough. Baseball season's cool, but it takes too long. Let's get into football season, the good stuff.
Go ahead, Gene.
Oh, I'm sorry. Russ, I want to ask you about one player here in kind of like there's a lot of questions I want to throw your way, but for the Buffalo Bills last year, talk about stinging. Xavier Worthy was on the board. The Bills didn't opt to keep him, make that pick. Kansas City does. Could the Bills or any team go the speed route once again here? What are your thoughts on what Matthew Golden did here at the Combine, and where does he fit in this draft, would you say?
Those guys, absolutely. I mean, the speedsters, a player like Golden, as you mentioned, they all fit what Buffalo or Kansas City or even a team like Baltimore. I mean, all these teams could use a player like that because he's so dynamic due to his speed, but also his route running ability, the way that he can run after the catch. All those things matter, and I definitely think he's the type of player that if that's a guy that you want, you might have to go up and get him. And I think that's the only downside to him is you're probably going to have to trade up for him. The same for, his teammate on the other side of the football, Jahdae Barron. It really sounds like he's not getting outside of the top 15 with how he performs. So I think that a lot of that can be said to any player that had a positive combine because it is tough to gauge a little bit. But I'm with you. I think Matthew Golden and a couple of these other receivers make a ton of sense for a team like Buffalo if they want to double down and take another pass catcher because we know they took Keon Coleman, but we're a little unsure what's going to happen with Amari Cooper. We know they re-signed Shakir, but Golden would make a lot of sense if he's not there because is Luther Burden, is Emeka Ibuke there? I don't think Ted McMillan will be there. Will any of those guys end up being there? Because if Luther Burden is within reaching this, I think he'd make the phone call and try to go up and get a guy like that because of how versatile he is and dynamic he is with the ball in his hand.
Russ, I think we might have lost your connection with Bluetooth if you were on a headset because you just kind of cut out and we hear you, but you're way off in the distance now. Are you still there with us?
Yeah, I'm good. It's this stupid earpiece I have. I think I'm good now.
You are good. You sound much better. Let's kind of continue on that path here because we think about what the Bills could do at 30, and we certainly know that there are areas that they need to address. They may not find need, but they need to address defensive line. They need to address wide receiver. They certainly need to address cornerback. Out of those three, is there more depth with one position group in this draft than others? Where can the Bills find the most value if they stay put? Which position group would you lean towards?
I would say the defensive line group is the group that, to me, is the deepest in the draft. I think we saw 70-plus players collectively between interior and edge rushers at the Combine, the most that we've seen in quite some time. Additionally, I think we're going to see anywhere between 6 to 8, maybe even 9 total defensive linemen in each round of this year's draft. And I'm talking edge rushers and defensive tackles. These guys are just dynamic and versatile, and you can really put them in any which way. So if you're the Bills, if you feel like there's this need to go out and get a defensive lineman, which I think there is, there's a little uncertainty of what's going to happen with Von Miller. We know what they're going to get out of guys like A.J. Epinesa and stuff like that. There's some limitations with certain guys. So if you feel like there's some value somewhere across the board, they're probably going to take one because there's enough to pick from. But I will say, I think the biggest need for them outside of another wide receiver, I still think the biggest need is a corner. So if you're in round one, you're probably looking at a corner because I know they have Christian Benford and some younger guys, but there's some contracts that got to get sorted out too. And I think we're seeing that they're starting to sort out some of these contracts. But at the end of the day, with how deep the defensive line group is, I think you lean towards a corner if I'm Buffalo sitting in round one.
Yeah, another need perhaps is safety, and where you said, hey, Golden, if the Bills really want him, you might have to move up a little bit here. With the performance of Nick Emanwari at the Combine, does he fall into that category? Like, yeah, probably he's not going to be there at 30, correct?
He could be. He's one of those guys that I'm a little indifferent on because I like his tape. I don't love his tape. I know he's a freak athlete, and he did enough and checked enough boxes through this process to where you can justify probably taking him in the first round, specifically teams that are maybe in the back or, the back end of the first round because they're not going to get him on the turn when they, pick again in the second or third round. So I understand why some teams will take him in the first round or value him more. But when I watch his tape, he's the type of guy that there's one play where he comes out like a missile and just levels somebody. And then there's 3 or 4 in a row where kind of does the same thing, but he doesn't wrap up and he misses, or he takes a really bad angle and he gets himself out of position. And I'm like, well, if you're such a great athlete and you're so dynamic, why are you taking such poor angles at times? But I cannot deny what he did at the Combine, a 4.38, 43-inch vertical. We've seen this before. Obi Melifonwu from UConn, when he came out a few years back, he kind of did the same thing, but he didn't really work out. So I kind of have some reservations there because he is so big. Can you play him consistently in the back end of the secondary? Can he do those types of things? But he's a guy that definitely could be a first-round pick. It's just hard to gauge at this point because there hasn't been a ton of buzz up until he tested. So it'll be interesting over the next couple of weeks where we're at with him.
I want to go back to the defensive line, Russ, and there are 3 names that I kind of had circled, and I'm not sure where you come down on either of these 3 guys, but if I can get your evaluation, especially if we learned anything from this past week in Indianapolis. Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. Kenneth Grant is a name I keep hearing a lot out of Michigan, and Derek Harmon out of Oregon. Any of those guys you think available to the Bills at the end of the first round, and what do you know about some of these prospects?
I don't think Kenneth Grant or Derek Harmon will be there by 30. I will say if Derek Harmon is there for the Lions at 28, I would lean towards the Lions selecting him at pick 28. Kenneth Grant, kind of the same boat. If he was there at 28 and Derek Harmon was not, I would say the Lions would probably go that route with the defensive tackle. It's also hard to say what the Packers might do, what the Chargers might do. Even what the Texans or the Vikings will do. So kind of that range from 22 to 25, it gets a little interesting there because I feel like all 3 or 4 of those teams could utilize another interior defensive lineman. And the same could be said about the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21 if they figure out what's going on at quarterback. Cam Hayward's not getting any older or any younger. He's getting older. So they're another team to kind of pay attention to at defensive tackle. They've been sniffing around. I think Walter Nolan would be there. I like Walter Nolan on tape at 6'4", 295, 296. I think he's a guy that can play, as a 2-eye, as a 3. He could bump out to a 5. the biggest thing that I have with him is just there are times that he lacks body control. He gets knocked around a little bit, and for a guy with that size, he shouldn't get knocked around. He doesn't always disengage or work his hands, but that's kind of a collective thing across the defensive line with Ole Miss. I don't know if that's part of their alignment and what their responsibilities are, but it just felt like at times when watching the whole Ole Miss defensive line, that those guys would really just kind of stack and try to shed and stay in place. They would read and react. They wouldn't necessarily try to get bendy or use their hands and rush the passer the way that they're supposed to. But I would definitely be, if I'm a Bills fan, I would definitely be on board with Walter Nolan at 30 because he's probably not going to last much longer beyond that. He's really sounds like a guy that's going to be a top 40 pick, and the same can be said with Derek Harmon and Kenneth Grant. All three of these guys could very well be on their way to first-round status when we get to April.
Russell Brown, NFL draft analyst, fantasy pros, and betting pros, our guest here in the Sports Bar. Russ, another Bills storyline here is James Cook putting it out there what he's looking for in a new contract, which, quite honestly, is probably too rich for what Brandon Beane wants to pay. It's looking way ahead here, but he's in the last year of his deal, and maybe the Bills decide, hey, we got to go draft a replacement running back. And Buffalo does have not one but two second-round picks this year, one of them courtesy of the Steph Diggs trade. So my question is, you know who's at the top of this draft. I mean, the running back there is fantastic from out west, but who might be there in round 2 for Buffalo should the Bills use one of those 2 second-round picks?
Two guys that instantly just jump off the page to me that I think would fit. Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, Quinshon Judkins out of Ohio State. Caleb Johnson on my board as of right now with the grades and film in the combine, he's my running back number 2 at 6'1", 224. He ran a 4.57 40, which is not obviously the fastest in the world. And I'm not really overly concerned about the long speed. I'm worried about a guy that's got short area burst and quickness in those short areas of the field that can make defenders miss. And I think Caleb Johnson does that. He doesn't necessarily have the contact balance of other running backs in this draft, but I like the suddenness. I like that burst. I felt like at times watching him, he had the home run ability to take it the distance, and maybe he bulked up a little bit, and that's why his times were so, further away from a sub 4.5 than people thought. But the more that I watch him, I think he's a great fit for a zone scheme. I think Buffalo with that coaching staff, they could sprinkle plenty of design runs with zone blocking in front to utilize him and get home run ability, and a guy that I think if James Cook was to stick around, he would complement very well to James Cook, or if they let James Cook walk, he would complement Ray Davis very well. And the same could be said with Quinshon Judkins, who I thought had a home run pre-draft process up to this point at 6', 221. Ran a 4.48 40. The 10-yard split at 1.5 was really key. That just goes to show how explosive he is. And that's the type of player he is. He runs really hard. He runs very physical. Kind of reminds me of Isaiah Pacheco, the way he runs, kind of mad at the ground type of deal, running on hot lava, type of thing. But the more that you watch him, you really see the suddenness. You see that burst. You see a guy that can score touchdowns. He scored 10 or 11 touchdowns this past season. Between him and Henderson, they had over 2,000 yards rushing this season. So there's so much to be desired with him. And I think Judkins, his better football is actually in front of him where he's featured as a number 1 back. So if James Cook was to go, Judkins, I think, could be the guy to be that RB1 for them in Buffalo.
Russ, just general questions about the week in Indianapolis, risers and fallers. I mean, we heard a lot of the performance of Jackson Dart and how he may have vaulted himself into first-round status. I'm curious to get your take on that. And also, is there anything to some of the storylines that we heard of specifically with Abdul Carter and the potential of foot surgery? Does that hurt his stock at all? I would imagine it doesn't, but are there teams that are paying attention based on what they heard and saw in Indianapolis at the Combine last week?
Starting with Jackson Dart, he really seems to be the consensus number 2 quarterback to whoever you talk to. So it sounds like maybe a potential slide is going to happen for Shedeur Sanders. Now, obviously, a team could take him in the top 10 depending on how the board goes. I mean, if Cam Ward ends up going 1 or 2 to the Titans or to the Browns, and then a team like either the Giants or let's say the Raiders lean on Jackson Dart, then we could potentially see a player like Shedeur Sanders end up going a little bit sooner, because that's probably going to force a team, if they need a quarterback, to move up and get him at some point, because they don't want to let him slide too far and allow somebody else to take him. For example, let's say Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh really seems to be enamored with bringing back Justin Fields. They might do it on a 1-year deal. They might do it on like a Daniel Jones 3-year deal type thing. We'll see how that all works out. But if that was the case, they could be intrigued with a quarterback at 21 if there's one that falls to them. So if that player is Shedeur Sanders, obviously that would make a lot of sense. But a lot of love for Jackson Dart. People are very intrigued with the timing that he throws with, the pace that he throws with, the velocity, and he really drives a lot of throws, and he really focused on that, it felt like, at the combine. So he came away a big winner. Sanders, obviously not so much, but I think the Sanders stuff was more so the media hyping him up as a QB1, QB2, myself included. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. If I had to pick one, it's hard to pick. I don't love this quarterback class, but I think Sanders is the better quarterback of the bunch just from watching film, and I felt like there was more room to grow. But obviously the NFL maybe feels a little bit of a different way. We'll see how that all plays out, but it really seems like Cam Ward is QB1 collectively and consensusly, that he's that guy. Abdul Carter, very interesting with the foot, the shoulder. I still think he's going to be a top 5 pick. Teams are definitely going to monitor it. I think the Titans are really intrigued with him. I think they're the team to pay attention to with that first pick, and they may feel as if they move from 1 to, let's say, 3, and a team wants to get a quarterback. I think they feel pretty good that they can either get Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. It just matters if they can get a deal worked out to get out of that first pick. A couple of other quick players, Boston College edge, Donovan Ezaruko. I'm going to probably butcher that. He's going to be a first-round pick the way it sounds. And I would not be surprised if he jumped players like James Pierce, Mike Green, or even Michael Williams as the second or third edge rusher taken off the board.
Travis Hunter, just a basic question on him. I mean, can that work in today's NFL? Sure, they can develop some packages in one way or another, but he's saying basically, what he's going to do is more hard than what Shohei Ohtani is going to do, and I can't dispute that. I think it's an interesting take. But your thoughts overall on Hunter, and will some team try to limit him to one side of the ball?
I definitely think every team will limit him to one side of the football. I don't think he would last very long in the NFL playing 100, 120 snaps a game. I don't see that happening no matter what team he's on. Certainly, I think he could last if he plays on the defensive side of the football, which is where I think he's best suited to play, let's say, 60 defensive snaps, and then you sprinkle him in for, let's say, anywhere between 5 to 10, maybe 12 snaps on offense. And you throw a wrinkle in there, a package to get Cam Ward the football, or Cam Ward, excuse me. You get Travis Hunter the football, and you utilize him in the short areas of the field. You get him running deep, and people put attention to him as a defense, and it frees up so much more of your offense. So I think there's a lot of value to him. I think he's the best player in the draft. If you were the best receiver, if you were the best corner, you're the best at 2 positions, to me, you're the best in the draft. That's just how I break it down with him. But defensively, I love him. I think he plays very disciplined with his eyes and zone coverage. I don't think he plays with a lot of hesitation coming up. He clicks, he closes. He does the things that you need him to do as a defensive back, and I think that's where he's going to really thrive in the NFL. And I could see any of these teams in the top 5 be enamored by him. I would be surprised if he went any later than that.
One of the teams in the top 5 that I just find very compelling, because we're going into the season knowing that both the GM and the head coach are on the hot seat. What do you do, Russ, if you're the New York Giants?
Man, I would have drafted a quarterback probably a lot sooner than they have waited to do so. That's step one. They should have never attached attached everything to Daniel Jones. They really made a mistake with that. I think you got to find a way to convince a guy like a Sam Darnold or one of these bridge guys to come to your organization and try to win 6 or 7 games. You have to show some type of positive improvement across the board. But if I'm sitting there at 3, I'm really hoping that I can either land Cam Ward, I'm landing Abdul Carter, or I'm landing Travis Hunter. I don't know if there's any other direction that they can go with. I don't know if they can roll the dice on a Shedeur Sanders or a Jackson Dart or any quarterback for that matter. They might have to stay put, take the best player available that isn't a quarterback, and then try to move up from there. And maybe that's take 65 and 34 in this year's draft, or 34 in next year's first, and move back into the first round to get somebody else. Maybe that's Sanders or Dart. But they're just it's a dumpster fire. I mean, that's what it is for the Giants. I hate saying that for Giants fans out there, but it's poorly built on both sides of the football. There seems to be no direction on the offensive side of the football, and there's really no options for them to fix it in the short term. So scrambling, just figuring it out if I'm them, and I think they've really just done themselves a disservice with how they've neglected the position in, one, protecting the quarterback that they had in Daniel Jones, and then getting competition to make him better. And I don't know what direction they're necessarily going to go, but if I were them, I would take just the best player available and try to set themselves up for success. Because if I'm the ownership, I'm going, hey, give me the best player available, because I don't know if you guys are answers for what we're trying to do.
Russ Brown, our guest here, talking some NFL draft. Russell Brown with NFL Draft, Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. Russ, one team that I'm curious to get your take on here is New England, and they're going to hit the jackpot if Tennessee takes a quarterback and the Giants take a quarterback, and who knows what Cleveland is going to do. But let's just say that doesn't happen, and that those two top defensive players, including Hunter in there, go off the board. Is New England then a safe bet then, would you say, to trade down from number 4?
I definitely think they would want to trade down. I don't know if they'll be able to. I don't know if they'll find a taker there. I don't know if they would trade within the division with the Jets. It's possible that they, make something happen with the Raiders because of Tom Brady and his connection, obviously, to the Raiders and the Patriots and Robert Kraft and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I think that they would stay put, and they would probably be happy with Will Campbell. But if there's any sense of concern with the arm length and all of that, I would definitely keep tabs on Missouri offensive tackle Armand Membo. Everybody I've spoken to believes he's a top 15 pick locked in. You could probably pencil him into the top 10. I've heard the Jaguars are really enamored with him, so maybe the Patriots get wind of that and they would pivot towards Armand Membo to put on their offensive line. Everybody knows they got to rebuild that offensive line, and you can build around Drake May, obviously. So I think that they could lean that route. And if not, just kind of a shot in the dark here, maybe a pass catcher. Go out and get a receiver, a true number 1 receiver. Maybe that's McMillan out of Arizona. Maybe that's Luther Burden out of Missouri, or Emeka Egbuka out of Ohio State. But I think getting a pass catcher there is definitely on the table for them if the defensive players are gone.
Russell Brown doing some great work on the NFL Draft for Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. Good with his time joining us in the Sports Bar. Russ, tell everybody about the work you're doing, where we can get more of it here leading up to the end of April.
Yeah, a lot of it just on Twitter or X at Russ NFL Draft. You can follow along on Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros, Lions Wire for Lion stuff. There'll be draft stuff in there as well. So busiest time of the year, but the best time of the year. So I appreciate it as always, guys.
Russ, Tigers, are they the team in the AL Central this year?
I hope so. I mean, I've been waiting a long time. Last year was a lot of fun. I'm hoping it carries into a little bit more, but they got to get Torque going, and hopefully Scooble can stay dominant there too.
Thanks, Russ. Appreciate it, and let's do this again before the draft. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime.
It is a name that he brought up, and I want to remember this name because hearing Russ say that his stock improved over the course of the time in Indianapolis out of Boston College, Donovan Ezeraku, 16.5 sacks last season for the Eagles, edge rusher. And if his stock is rising and you've got some other marquee names in front of him on the defensive line, that feels like the kind of player that you keep in the Northeast, you bring into Buffalo, you've got your edge rusher of the future.
This feels like a draft where Buffalo doesn't need to trade up. Mind you, they traded down last year out of the first round altogether, but there doesn't.
Wait, who'd they trade down with again? That feels like something they.
I kind of erased it from my memory.
Oh, okay.
So maybe somebody can fill us in at 866-4.
Why would they trade down? That feels weird. I mean, I'm sure there were a lot of good players available to them when they were picking last year in the draft, but they felt like they had to trade out of that pick. Huh. Weird.
Feels like a good draft with the exception of quarterback. And maybe receivers aren't so great here, right? Is that fair to say? Or?
I just think there's a lot of names, a lot of playmakers, both with wide receiver and running back as well. It's something for everybody. I mean, it's the quarterback is thin, but if you like running backs, aren't you paying attention to where Genti goes or where Scatabo goes? I mean, like these are guys that you got to see a little bit more of on the big stage with the college football playoff, I'm just curious to see where they're going on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, there's plenty of guys to see, like, okay, where do the edge rushers end up? Where do the defensive tackles, some of these big guys, where do they end up?
I'm glad you brought up the Carter injury with the foot. If it's me,
don't care.
I don't care.
I'm still taking him.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Like Giant fans, that's who you should want.
Oh, the Giants are a mess. Of course, they only have one quarterback on their roster right now.
Well, they only need one. Why?
Because he's Italian.
I mean, what is all this talk, Aaron Rodgers? hey, Aaron, you get out of line here. I don't know how it was over there, but over here.
Yeah. We got Tommy DeVito backing you up, huh? You think you just show up here? You act up, we break your legs. We get DeVito in the game because he's Italian. We get Tommy Cutlets in there. Happy hour coming up here in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. We have time for your calls at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. The Bengals have taken the best free agent wide receiver off the board by franchise tagging T. Higgins for the second consecutive season. We'll dive into that. We had a trade from over the weekend as Deebo Samuel is headed now to Washington to be a Commander, and we'll get to a round of shots as well.
Yeah, and then Mike Danger doing something that I never thought I would ever hear.
Yes. Everybody's release valve is different. Everybody needs, guys especially. We need a release from time to time. Although this one is a little bit out of character for me. I'll explain.
Way out of character.
We'll get to that and more next with Happy Hour in the Sports Bar. Danger and Battaglia on the Fan.
Because who needs more sleep when you can have sports excitement? WROC-AM, WBEE HD2 Rochester, and streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
We got Sabres hockey tonight. The Sabres looking to break their two-game slide. They play up in Montreal. Our coverage will begin at 7 o'clock. Amherst will be up there, kind of. They'll be in the suburb of Laval this weekend. Devin Levi today named the AHL Goaltender of the Month for February. Khalil Shakir in Buffalo today talking about his new deal. He's grateful for having a quarterback like Josh Allen.
Just how thankful I am to play with him and that he's my quarterback, and just told him and I mean it, my success is from him, and I truly mean that, him trusting me, throwing me the ball. Like I said before, he's one of a kind, and to be able to continue to play with him is special.
Bengals today announcing they're going to use the franchise tag again on T. Higgins with no long-term deal. Higgins will make $26 million. The Eagles to release corner Darius Slay. Former Cowboys head coach Jimmy Johnson retires from Fox Sports. Gene Battaglia in the sports leader, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
Lofts one right down the middle. This one is caught by Shakir at the 3. Heads into the end zone. Yet another Buffalo touchdown.
We're 9 days.
9 times.
From the start of the new league year. 7 days from the legal tampering period.
Top 5 rumors I heard at the NFL Scouting Combine.
Mike Danger.
If you're about to enjoy a single serving item, enjoy the whole thing. If you're indulging in a single serving food, commit to the cause. No half-eaten single serving items. I don't understand that.
Gene Battaglia.
Danger, I realize this. If I just say it's my opinion, I can't get in trouble.
That's right.
It's my opinion that there's some ulterior motives. That's all I'll say. It's my opinion. I think Chris Leverage would agree with Mike Danger's take on this.
That's right.
And the Oscar goes to
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
So Hollywood is crawling with outsiders and foreigners. And if we kick them all out, you'll have nothing to watch but football and mixed martial arts, which are not the arts. They gave me 3 seconds to say this, so.
How much did you watch last night?
When I tell you this, I'm telling you the truth. Close your eyes. Nothing.
Wow.
0.
I watched more of the Oscars than you did.
0.
Wow.
0. I was in bed by 10:30 last night. I watched Mets Red Sox in the office.
Everything is an absolute shock today in the sports bar. It's like Bizarro sports bar.
Right. You're going to a Met game without me? It's not fun. We should be doing the live broadcast.
All right, listen. This weekend, without any real sports action to okay, football. We're just trying to fill this void with the NFL being gone.
No outdoor hockey didn't do it for you?
No, sorry. So your mind wanders, and I've got a couple of friends who used to work here in Rochester. We all work together, and they're in New York City now, and we've been talking for months about going to a fancy New York steakhouse, getting prime rib, getting bourbon, having a great time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you know what? Let's up the ante. Let's make a day of it. Let's do more than just go. And so I start looking at the schedule for the Mets and for the Yankees. Don't take this as a knock, but a lot of primetime games for the Yankees. Not as many daytime options for the New York Yankees as there are for the Mets. I saw a date for the Mets on May 1st, and I'm like, at 1 o'clock, 1:10 first pitch, I'm like, there's our game. That's the one we got to go to. So, yeah, I'm going to go to a Mets game with a couple of Mets fans.
Flying down, or are you driving down?
No, we'll fly down.
Fly down,
yeah. And that's what sealed it is I looked up flights. I'm like, going to New York City is more affordable now than I think it's ever been. Maybe it's because I'm booking a couple months in advance, but just looking, I'm like, whoa, these prices are, they spend a lot more doing other things than flying to New York City.
Yeah, congesting price and keeping everybody away.
Yeah, right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I am jealous, and I will be doing the show that day. I'll be in here with Dan DeLorean. We'll be like, okay, let's see if we have a cutaway of Mike Danger. Do you need any Met gear, by the way?
I'm not going to wear any Met gear. I'm a Cubs fan. You know this. I'm not wearing any Met gear, but I am excited to go to another ballpark to take in an atmosphere. But what do I need aside from Edgar? Should I get the giant OMG thick chain 3D printed? Do I need to dress up as Grimace? Do I need a milkshake or cotton candy? What do I need, Gino? What do I need to fit
what
in?
other little things can you throw my way?
Can I wear some clown shoes instead of regular shoes as I'm walking into to Citi Field to fit in? What exactly do I need just to make sure that I'm accepted?
I'm telling you, Arizona is actually a good team. So
I agree.
You're going to see a good game there.
I agree. I'm excited for it. And then you're telling me you didn't watch this. I mean, I even watched the monologue and I think I watched the first one, Macaulay Culkin's brother won. And aside from that, I'm like, I could kind of sense, I'm like, okay, as the foreigners are going up on stage winning their awards for like short animated film or whatever, like I started to get a sense of, all right, this is going to start to get political. This is going to start to get. I'm going to tap out. I tapped out. I tapped out. So I don't know what happened. Essentially, after Kieran Culkin won his award for Best Supporting Actor. Aside from that, I thought Conan O'Brien, he secured a gig for the next few years. Did a good job.
Again, I don't even know you. Like normally, I'm the one who samples it a little bit, and it was actually you last night.
Fun bit with Adam Sandler. They were talking about how everybody's dressed up. Adam Sandler's dressed like he's going to play some pickup basketball, sitting in the crowd, and Conan O'Brien points him out, and Sandler has a big, he reverts to Billy Madison, and the voice that he does of Billy Madison was like, all right, this isn't bad. This isn't bad. And as soon as I could kind of feel it turning a little bit, I'm like, all right, I'm good. I did my time. So I watched maybe like the first 45 minutes or so.
It was one of those, it's this weekend. Hey, by next week, we're talking about conference tournaments. We're talking about March Madness. We are talking about all the stuff that you absolutely love. And by next Monday, legal tampering begins, which means we will know lots and lots. So Danger, although it still feels like winter, the winter of sports, it's melting away, my friend. Spring is here. We're going to be talking more, these NFL moves and college basketball and, yes, a little baseball coming up in shots too.
Good stuff. Well, we've got a couple of notes from the NFL to get to today here with the Combine in the past. Mike Catalana, Russ Brown, both great, joining us here in the Sports Bar this afternoon and sharing their thoughts from Indianapolis from this past week. If you missed either conversation, find us wherever you download your podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast. That includes the free-to-download Odyssey app.
I want to ask you the question, ask Catalana.
Yeah.
Von Miller, if you say, Von, you do say, okay, come back at this price. Do you want him back? Or are you just like, yeah, you know what, Von, we wish you well?
I am done with him. Me, personally. I'd be like, all right, good run. Thank you for being a soldier last year. Thank you for taking the pay cut. You can see that we honored our end of the deal. You got incentivized for your 6 sacks. We got you in there as much as we could get you in there. We battled through.
You can't be upset at us, right?
Right. We battled through you being suspended for a few games. Stuff that we protected you. We didn't really say anything. It wasn't an issue. Kind of went over like nothing. Now it's time. Yeah, you move on. I think you move on. Doesn't mean that that's what they're going to do. It is Von Miller. It is a future Hall of Famer. And if you are going to invest in defensive line and an edge rusher early in the draft, worse people to learn from than Von Miller. But then I would also say, if that's true, then why haven't we seen more from Greg Rousseau? Why haven't we seen more out of A.J. Epinez? If he's this great mentor, then why haven't these other guys? And I know that my point is I don't think he is a great mentor. I think he's just a presence. I think he's a presence that you can learn from, but
you learn by example and everything else. He goes about his work, blah, 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 blah.
You either have it or you don't, and these guys just don't have it. Von Miller had it, but he can talk about technique. Not everybody can do what Von Miller did through the course of his career.
I think that's the easiest way to get cap compliant. And I don't think anybody's going to be upset, and you have the need. You're going to need to create a roster spot. If you're going to draft another defensive end, if you're going to maybe sign somebody, hopefully, or trade for somebody, well, then when it gets to the 53-man roster, you need to kind of make things work. And as far as I know, Danger, A.J. Epinez is going to be on this roster next year.
Yeah.
So, too, is Greg Rousseau. So, yes, this is an easy move, in my opinion, to make.
The Bills did make a move today. Not really a move, but they declined to tender Quentin Morris, tight end, third-string tight end. So he will be allowed to hit the open market next week when the league year begins as a unrestricted free agent, unless they sign him to another deal. The lowest rejected free agent tender this year is $3.263 million. So the Bills would have had to pay him that. And then if a team were to match that, the Bills wouldn't be getting any compensation if they were not going to be able to match it. So they just said, you know what, forget it. For the production, we can look elsewhere.
I think it's a calculated risk. You know, I think you would love to have Quentin Morris back at Fisher, would you not? Absolutely. I think he's done okay in his time as a third tight end, but he's going to be, well, he is 26, going to be 27 out of Bowling Green. I mean, is there going to be anybody who's going to want to pay that number? And I'm going to guess no.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think maybe he does come back.
The Bengals made news today because they, for the second consecutive season, have placed the franchise tag on their wide receiver T. Higgins. This year's tag will cost the Bengals $26.2 million, or at least right now it will count against their cap as they work to extend Higgins with a long-term deal. They have until July 15th.
So what's the plan here? They're going to have like two of the top three wide receivers in terms of pay when this is all said and done? Because correct me if I'm wrong, they really haven't done anything with Jamar Chase. And forgive me, I'm not sure off the top of my head who said this today, but it doesn't seem like Jamar Chase and the Bengals are actually that close here.
Right.
But we know that, well, T. Higgins and the Bengals aren't close. So, hey, guess what? You're staying around. Actually, I think this is good for Higgins because you want to you want to play this game. Kirk Cousins became a very wealthy man by Washington kind of mismanaging this. And this is one thing that I think Brandon Beane does well. He's ahead of the curve. You don't negotiate at the 11th hour. You're having these conversations all along. And, for the Bengals here, it just seems like they're kind of late to this. Or, gosh, maybe if you didn't want him part, maybe you would have tested his trade value at some point. To me, it wouldn't surprise me if the Bengals at some point, we can't come to a long-term deal. You're a free agent. Like Carolina once upon a time did with Josh Norman.
Dysfunctional teams do dysfunctional things. It's the same thought I have behind the Browns and Myles Garrett. Like, I know a lot of people will say because the Browns continue to say that they want Myles Garrett there, that's just smokescreen. Everybody has a price. Somebody can get Myles Garrett from the I actually believe that the Browns want Myles Garrett there. Like, they actually want this player who wants out in the worst way, won't talk to the team, has cut bait already. In their head, they're still telling themselves, no, we want him to retire a Brown.
Good. Here's why, okay? Follow me on this, everyone. The reason I think that's good is this. If you're a Bills fan, and chances are if you're listening to our show, maybe you like the team. How do you want to go about the Bills trying to get over the hump once and for all here in 2025? Do you want to trade for Myles Garrett right now? Or do you want to wait till after the draft, spend your first-round pick on the best defensive tackle or whatever it may be, and you're going to sacrifice draft picks in the future? I think I want the latter. I mean, the idea that Cleveland will get to draft night and Myles Garrett will – what happens then, Danger? How contentious, how ugly would this get in Cleveland? And you could say, I will listen to this, ultimately, is if they're going to make him the highest paid player. I'm not so sure on that. From the Browns standpoint, they did that with a quarterback. That didn't work out.
Well, there are also reports that the Cowboys have begun negotiations on a new deal for Micah Parsons, which doesn't feel like a Cowboys thing, and it might not mean anything because just because they're talking about it doesn't mean that they're going to get to one. But there is a race, I think, to who's going to get paid more, whether it's Garrett or Parsons, and the team that moves first will get the bargain out of the deal when ultimately the other guy resets the market.
Okay, so does that hurt Myles Garrett, his trade value, knowing that, oh, great, we got to pay a little more? I don't think so. I think this is actually, I can't say smart on the Cowboys because smart and Cowboys normally don't go together. But that's actually smart business.
A lot of teams that have the kind of cap space that could absorb a new deal for Myles Garrett. One of those teams actually did make a trade this weekend. That's the Washington Commanders, who now are in possession of Deebo Samuel, wide receiver. And I know a lot of times people will say, hey, you want a deal that's a win-win for both teams where everybody wins. Is there such thing as a deal where it could be a lose-lose? Because that's what this felt like to me. This feels like a lose-lose. I don't know that anybody wins in this deal for Deebo Samuel.
Well, Deebo Samuel, and gosh, Danger, he had 1,700 yards. He had 14 touchdowns. That was in 2021, okay? So we've had now 3 full seasons between that season and now, and this would be the 4th entering. To your point about the cap, did you know Washington has the 3rd most cap space?
Yep.
Yeah, so at $83 million, New England at the top, Vegas in between. Sure, but they shouldn't be done in that regard. This is one of the things that, I'd say it's a luxury buy for Washington. You're not paying the quarterback. Why not load up in that regard?
Totally agree.
And you already have, they do have a number one. Buffalo does not really have a true number one. Terry McLaurin is a true number one, I believe, in Washington. So if you have Samuel kind of as the complementary and you manage your expectations in that regard, it's not surprising to me that he only went for a 5th because you're paying the salary. And again, and he's, with his style of play, he's always kind of banged up a little bit too, so you got to manage that.
I just remember the season that you're referencing that he went off. He was more than just a wide receiver. I mean, they were using him in the run game. You didn't know where they were, and he had a problem with that. Like, he didn't want the wear and the tear, and he didn't want. He was pretty vocal about that, and he hasn't been the same ever since. I don't know how much of that is the relationship with Kyle Shanahan, and certainly things in San Francisco looked a little less than functional in the last 12 months. He drafted Ricky Pearsall, and you'll probably get some production out of him and replace some of that Samuel production with Pearsall. But things in San Francisco don't feel great, and you're going to commit to Brock Purdy long-term here. Who are you actually going to put around him moving forward now with Samuel heading to Washington? And you're right. If you're the Commanders, you have a quarterback playing the way Daniels played last year on his rookie deal. Load up, get every piece you can get, and try to make the most out of this run that you're going to go on. Darius Slay is going to be released by the Philadelphia Eagles.
So, sticking with the cap, would it surprise you to know that the world champion Eagles entering this phase here where you got to get under the cap, they're cap compliant, but they have the most dead cap, $59 million. You know, like, oh my gosh, the Bills are going to be dead this year because they have the most dead cap along with Denver. No, they were just fine. Cleveland is actually second on the list, $51 million dead cap, and we haven't even gotten to the Deshaun Watson.
Right.
Darius Slay, do I want any part of him? No. I am convinced that the Bills are going to draft a corner in this. I know you're warning me and others about Elam again.
At minimum, I think he's competing. If they do draft, and I agree with you, I think they will draft a corner. And we'll get excited about the corner that they draft, whether it's in the 1st or the 2nd round. But that's the corner that will be competing for a job with Kyer Elam.
You need Elam to stick around, give it one last shot here, and if he shows you.
I mean, he's probably not going to show you because he hasn't shown you. But at minimum, he's there to compete for a future. And his future might not be in Buffalo. But we talk about the life cycle of a corner all the time here in the sports bar. And you would certainly look at a guy like Slay and say, like, technically might be at the top of his game at this advanced stage of his career, but is he physically able to match up and do the things that you need him to do after all of his years in the NFL? I would say, yeah, you could probably get younger there if you were to draft somebody and give it Kyer Elam another shot.
You know, it's funny, though, because Rasul Douglas is on the wrong side of that life cycle, right? But I thought he was serviceable for Buffalo, but you can do better, I think, at corner too. And why not try to draft a stud opposite Christian Benford? Can you imagine if the Bills, and this will happen, if you spent your 1st round pick on a corner and you hit on that, okay, that would be, you have 2 corners, and I'm not ready to call Christian Benford locked down, but he's certainly one of the best here in the AFC.
Just a couple of notes and headlines from around the NFL today as we are a week away from legal tampering. Oh, and Jimmy Johnson hanging it up, which that isn't a zero. That feels like something because he's been such a part of our Sundays for quite some time now.
That is the place if you're like an ex-NFL head coach. I mean, you just show up once a week. Granted, there is a lot of prep that goes into it, but you're not really forced to say anything controversial. You're just there to kind of react in real time. Honestly, I think Jimmy Johnson did quite well for himself all these years after Danger. How many years has it been since he left Miami?
Right.
Or Dallas even.
Right. Yeah, he first worked with the network after he was with the Cowboys, and that ended in March of 94. And he went back to the Dolphins 96 to 99, and he came back right after that. So we're talking
26 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
26 years plus the couple of years that he did there between the Cowboys and the Dolphins. So almost 30 years. Almost 30 years or over 30 years. Bad at math. But yeah, he spent a lot of time there with everybody in the studio. So you're left with Menifee, Strahan, Howie, Gronk, and Jay Glazer, and see if they find somebody to replace. I'm sure they'll find somebody to replace Jimmy Johnson.
Right, who that might be.
Urban Meyer, step on up. You're the next contestant on Fox NFL Sunday. There you go. So there's your headlines from around the NFL. We got to get to a round of shots next in the sports bar.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm just kind of yapping on here. We got some injury news out of the Yankees here. We want to update everybody on. We got some baseball talk here too, and what is the next sport we're going to have a labor situation? Well, let's put it this way: who is the commissioner in sports that would say something that would make you say, okay, but why would you even go down this road here? Do you remember how Clemson and Florida State let us out of the ACC?
Lots of lawsuits, lots of legal talk.
Well, okay, we might have a resolution on that. Those stories coming.
Okay, we'll get to that and more next. A round of shots on the way. Hey, don't forget about Last Call, where you can have the final word in the sports bar. Call us at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
Sports Update.
Sabres hockey tonight. Buffalo looking to snap a 2-game slide. They're up in Montreal. Our coverage will begin at 7 o'clock. Amerks goaltender Devin Levi today named the AHL Goaltender of the Month for February. Khalil Shakir in Buffalo today talking about that new deal.
Just to kind of see it all come together. Before it was announced the night before is when it was like, all right, cool, got the final call. And it's just been like a crazy feeling since. Like, I don't really know how to feel. Obviously super excited and stuff like that, but it feels surreal.
Cincinnati Bengals announcing they'll use the franchise tag again on T. Higgins with no long-term deal. Higgins will make $26 million in 2025. Philadelphia Eagles releasing corner Darius Slay. Former Cowboys head coach Jimmy Johnson retires from Fox Sports. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
From the field to the court to the rink, the sports leader is there. 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Welcome back into the Sports Bar. It's Danger and Battaglia. Happy hour continues for your ride home. Thanks for listening at 95.7 FM, AM 950. If you already got home and you're checking us out on the stream, we appreciate you. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel, The Fan Rochester, also streaming on Twitch. Time for a round of shots.
This according to a report from Marquel Slaughter of the DNC. Aquinas football coach Mo Jackson parting ways with the school. They just won the championship
Section 5 title, yeah.
In his first season.
Second season.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I was on that call, their last regular season game of the year last season against Hilton, and had the chance to interview them after they won that game. And the way they played in that game and the way you saw that team kind of react and respond, I'm like, that's the team that's going to win sectionals. I mean, like and we have the opportunity and the privilege to be able to see a lot of these Section 5 programs firsthand. Talk to the coaches, talk to the captains. Yeah. You get a sense of who's got it and who doesn't. And man, Aquinas at the end of last season, they were really turning it on.
Yeah, that's that's surprising news. Danger, if I told you, hey, Team X looking for the longest home winning streak in 26 years, you think that things would be going great, right? Referring to the Buffalo Sabres, they were looking for their first 7-game home winning streak since 1999. Well, that didn't happen. Montreal winning in regulation. The Sabres have now dropped the last 2. Back end of the home and home tonight in Quebec at 7 o'clock.
But listen anyways.
Syracuse basketball avoiding the embarrassment of being left out of the ACC tournament.
Oh, man.
Now, with the conference now at 18 teams, not everyone gets in. No. Only 15 get invited. Syracuse letting a 13-point lead get away in the second half. They lost in overtime to Virginia Tech. But you know what? Syracuse backing in anyways, thanks to Boston College. BC losing shortly thereafter. The ACC tournament begins next Tuesday. Syracuse wrapping up the regular season at home Saturday night against Virginia.
It's here, man. Tournament season. We made it.
Oh, PJ on Wednesday.
We're getting PJ.
So good.
We should reach out to Brad Evans too. Big Noise.
Oh,
I mean, this is his time of year too, man. He loves him some brackets.
Sounds like the ACC is going to stick together here, Danger. ESPN and others reporting that there's been a settlement reached between the conference and the 2 schools that really wanted to leave, being Clemson and Florida State. The settlement includes a new revenue distribution model.
What is this really about, though? I mean, like, if they're settling instead of fighting, there's something on the horizon that's going to make everybody a little bit happier. Is there not?
So you think that the Big East ACC thing could go through? Because I think that's a storyline that not everybody's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's maybe part that, and also, you're the SEC. What do you need Clemson for? You're the Big Ten. What do you really need Florida State for?
You don't.
Yeah, you don't. Right. Jessup Pegula winning her first event of the season, the ATX Open in Austin, Texas. In her semifinal win, cheering her on from the stands was actor Matthew McConaughey. WTA titled the 7th for Pegula, her first since winning in Toronto last summer before reaching the U.S. Open final.
Good for her.
What is the next sport that could suffer a work stoppage? More and more, it's sounding like baseball. Get ready for a lockout in 2026, says Union head Tony Clark. Rob Manfred is actually pro-lockout. Danger, I'm going to read you this
Say
quote.
what?
This is Manfred, quote, "In a bizarre way, it's actually a positive. It's a great thing about off-season lockouts is the leverage that exists that gets applied between the two bargaining parties."
2020 is going to be remembered.
Where's the ass kiss? Where's Smithers? There he is.
Thank you. 2020 is going to be remembered as a baseball season like no other. Our clubs, and especially our players, were presented with an array of unique challenges.
Man, he didn't see that coming. He didn't know he was going to get hit with the shower of booze. And he sounds like he's got something in a vice.
If you think that's a weird quote, Manfred also saying a lockout is like using a .22 compared to a shotgun.
Okay, bud.
Boy, shush.
Yeah.
Don't
okay,
talk.
bud. Yeah, not great. Not great.
No, wouldn't you think like, hey,
baseball of all sports can't go through this again. Like I feel like we do this with baseball every time they go to the bargaining table.
Baseball actually is coming off its best year since when? You could say the Dodgers, it's bad for the game, and no, like
Yankees Dodgers was fun.
That was fun, and there's so many stars in this game, and this is where you actually just kind of sit down and you figure all this out. Now, kind of throwing a wrench into things here, ESPN backing out. And maybe this is ESPN seeing a thing because, all right, who's going to bid on something if the 2026 season isn't for sure?
This is bad.
Yeah.
It's just bad. I mean, there's an arrogance there where I'm sure, if it won't be ESPN, ABC, or Disney, then maybe we can get Apple. Apple has been a great partner for us.
Oh, the Roku Game of the Week.
Yeah, the Roku network. We'll have to watch on Roku exclusively.
What is like the Tubi?
Yeah.
Welcome to Tubi.
What the hell? What are we doing, guys? Come on.
Luis Gil, the New York Yankees, he's going to be shut down for at least 6 weeks. He's got a high-grade lat strain. Gil was the American League Rookie of the Year. Now, mid-April is the best-case scenario here.
Okay. Well, congratulations, Luis Gil, on missing the rest of spring training. I just look at injuries happen this time of year. A lot of it, I don't want to dismiss anybody who's injured, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, you got out of spring training. You're done.
I think for pitchers, it's kind of a big deal because even though he can, when they say back in mid-April, he's going to have to do rehab or whatever it is. And yeah, it takes a long time. Spring training game, by the way, the Blue Jays hosting the Phillies. First pitch of the game, Toronto's Max Scherzer throws a strike right down the middle of the plate to Philadelphia's Trey Turner. Turner taking it for a strike. Turner touches his helmet to challenge the call. Scherzer actually cracks up laughing on the mound. It was his last outing that Scherzer was critical of the new ABS system, asking for humans to call balls and strikes.
Yeah, I like that. I like Turner having a little fun with Scherzer and the two of them kind of knowing each other and riffing off of each other there a little bit.
I want to say they were teammates for a brief time in LA.
Washington.
No. Oh, Washington too, yeah.
Yeah, Washington.
What am I thinking? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought when they were both with the Nats, but yeah, for somebody as outspoken as Scherzer has been, and for Turner to play off with that, just make a mockery of everything Major League Baseball is trying to do.
And then they go to like the simulation. Where did it go? Like
right down the pipe, right down the pipe. Let's just slow things down. Let's get a little bit of a spell. I like it, Gino. I'm watching spring training games every day this week on ESPN. They had the Red Sox and the Orioles on earlier, and I'm like, oh, that's in Sarasota. Oh,
you in Sarasota? Why don't you just go? Move right now.
I can. I got a daughter in high school. She's got a couple years left, and then when she's out of high school, Gino, then all bets are off. But man, I can very easily visualize myself taking it to spring training games.
Plus, you've got the mild to aggressive Italian wife.
Oh, my God. There has not been an SNL skit that has spoken directly to me. And maybe you're like me. Maybe you saw this skit with who's the comedian that they had on? And why am I blanking on his name right now? The couple of beers.
Yeah.
Couple of beers skit was fantastic. And, yeah, one of the symptoms or one of the side effects of a couple of beers, moderate to severe Italian wife. You were speaking my language. You were absolutely speaking my language. We got to get to last call. We have time for your calls if you want to join us. 866-4326-585, 866-4FAN.
You're listening You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
If you're going to do something tonight against Montreal and tomorrow against San Jose, show composure. Like, be able to elevate your control and your confidence with the puck. Like, show that. Right. Maybe you're learning from that last game and the last, couple of minutes of the game.
Maybe they're learning. How many times have we heard, maybe they're going to learn. Maybe they'll learn something from... Maybe that's what they need. They just need to learn.
No, I don't want any false hope. This is good. Just continue and like you said, Francesa, like the NHL trade deadline coming up on Friday.
Nobody cares, man. Nobody cares. What are you going to do? What are you going to do that's going to all of a sudden make us be like, oh, wow, that's the move?
Well, let me give you the Kevin Adams present. Well, we had a lot of conversations with teams. And
It's not like
conversations.
It's not like we have palm trees here, guys. Yeah, that'll play over well.
An update on this Maurice Jackson story. This courtesy of Channel 8. Maurice Jackson was fired by Aquinas after 2 seasons.
After winning
the
a sectional title. Their first since, 2018, I want to say.
Yeah, they went 9-3.
Uh-huh.
I mean, to pivot, you're going against McQuaid and some other some other. Okay, so there's obviously part of the story we may never know on that.
Okay. I'm sure somebody would share what they know with us, but we obviously would never. We're always going to be credible. We're going to cite our sources. We're going to, we're not going to speculate on anything.
No, but it seems like the timing of this is
fishy.
It's
fishy. The timing of it is fishy. Moving on, firing him after a sectional, it's fishy. There's something there. But, again, we'll be respectful. We will not speculate. We will only talk about what's being reported.
What do you go, baseball writer?
Because we're credible. We're going to be credible journalists. We have journalistic integrity.
Yeah, that and I don't like getting sued. Neither do you.
I'm not ready to get sued. No, we will not defame anybody. Fun show this afternoon, man. This was it was nice to kind of dig in a little bit deeper on some of these prospects coming out of Indianapolis and the NFL Scouting Combine. We talked to Russell Brown. We talked to Mike Catalana. And also kind of curious, when we talked to Catalana, you say it's not a foregone conclusion that Von Miller isn't a Buffalo Bill moving forward, that he could still come back. They're just going to probably ask him to reduce his salary again.
I guess if you that would be like the passive aggressive move, right? We're going to strip it down. There's no incentive. You make the minimum. We owe you for what we owe you on the last year's incentives, but beyond that, we're just maybe that's just kind of the realism. I would just move on. And by the way, if I had to make a prediction, I don't think he goes out. I think he latches on somewhere. I could see a place like Denver, say, for instance, go back there and help a young team.
With Russell Brown joining us, got to learn a little bit more of some of the prospects, the risers and the fallers from the week in Indianapolis and the Scouting Combine. I mean, let's face it, Jackson Dart did a lot to increase his stock. There's a lot of people now believing not only is he the second best quarterback in this draft behind Cam Ward, that he could actually go in the top half of the first round of round 1 of the NFL draft. That remains to be seen, but he had himself a week in Indy for the Combine.
Interesting, too, because I love getting different perspectives, because this is the time of year where we're all like, oh, my gosh, all these guys are great, and we start to buy in. And, well, the one guy who looked like a Combine warrior, Nick Emenwari, somebody we've kind of talked about, I heard Tasker talking about, the safety from South Carolina. Could this actually be somebody that the Bills could look at number 30? And look, it was great having Russell Brown and saying, yeah, the tape sometimes you don't see it on every play with Emenwari.
Yeah, and I wonder with a guy that has the size and the gifts that he has, if he's even there for you at 30. I look at a player like on the edge out of Boston College, Donovan Ezeraku, who had 16.5 sacks last season for the Eagles, and he had himself a nice combine as well and may have worked himself into the first round. So maybe that's a player that's available to the Buffalo Bills if they stay put at pick 30. We've got plenty of time here, a month and a half, almost 2 full months, to talk NFL draft, and we'll do it with some of the best and the brightest minds out there. What it means for the Buffalo Bills, well, for that, we talk to our guys, and guys like Matt Perino, who will be stopping by the sports bar again for his usual Tuesday afternoon visit tomorrow afternoon right around 3:25.
Yeah, we'll talk to Perino tomorrow. Also, Amerks head coach Mike Leone. We're, 2 overtime games. You lose both in the shootout. Man, losing in Utica, that's our home, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, come on, what are we doing? So, well, they go up to Laval, and this will be the test. And, of course, Devin Levi from up there. Levi named the AHL Goaltender of the Month. We'll talk to the Amerks head coach coming up tomorrow on the show as well.
Yeah, right now you've got Laval sitting 3 points behind Rochester for first place in the North Division. So a lot on the line for the Rocket as they host the Amerks this weekend, and we'll ask Coach Leone what he's doing this week here to get his team prepared and to get a couple of wins, hopefully north of the border. That's at 4:25 tomorrow afternoon. And, of course, Mike Leone joining us every Tuesday at that time. So we mentioned the Sabres. We have the Sabres against Montreal in Montreal tonight before returning home tomorrow night to take on San Jose. But I don't know if you caught any of the home game against Montreal. I mean, Montreal in Buffalo, I think, is frustrating, if not more frustrating than Toronto coming in to KeyBank because of how loud the barn gets for Habs fans or Leaf fans. And there's nothing you can really do. But if you're a player, it's got to eat at you. It's got to.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the problem. And so you don't have any vibe. You don't have the atmosphere. And the Sabres just kind of look a little lifeless, a little flat. And I'll say this as well. For as great as Levi has been playing here, UPL hasn't been great.
No.
You need him to be great. He hasn't been great. Look, a lot of the goals that this team gives up are just lifeless defensive performances. Guys left way too wide open, giving up on plays. I mean, you're giving up goals with less than 3 seconds to go in a period. I mean, it's like, okay, you're giving up on a play. You're giving a guy way too much space. But you still need your goaltender to be a little bit more than he's been.
That concludes today's portion of Sabres Talk.
Well, I'm just got, pregame before the pregame, 7 o'clock. No,
1 minute here. Not only does St. John's win their first Big East title since '85, to do it walking out in the white suit,
just
like
cojones.
Rick Pitino. When you go down to New York, that guy owns the city right now, Rick Pitino.
Yeah, you have to have unbelievable swagger to pull off the white suit, and the guy makes it look effortless, absolutely effortless. Deserves that title. First title since the 80s?
85. First regular season title for St. John's.
Guys still got it. Do you give him a chance when it's all said and done in March? You have to,
Dude,
right?
they're ranked 6 right now.
Yeah, you have to.
Of course. We're all going to be pulling for that guy.
Yeah.
Yes, he's got some things in his past. Okay. Like, comparatively speaking, I don't know.
Yeah. That's big. Well, we'll get some college hoops talk this week in the sports bar when PJ Glasser stops by here for his visit on Wednesday afternoon. We'll get some winners from PJ as well, start to talk about some of these tournaments as we get ready for tournament season here in the sports bar with Danger and Particular. So, again, if you missed Russell Brown or Mike Catalana, either of those conversations, you can find them now wherever you get your podcasts. You can find them in the free-to-download Odyssey app. That's AUDACY. You can go back and watch the stream of today's show on our YouTube channel. That's The Fan Rochester. While you're there, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Feel free to leave a comment, engage with us. We appreciate that. Back tomorrow afternoon, Matt Perino, the Syracuse Post-Standard at 3:25. Amerks head coach Mike Leone at 4:25. JR Sport Brief coming up next. Sabres hockey on the way at 7. Have a great night. Talk to you tomorrow at 3 on The Fan Rochester.